Okay, everyone, good morning. Welcome to the Monday, top of the week edition of Reality Check here on the home of Black Talk Media. It's none other than WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM in Philly proper. Beyond, it is WURDradio.com throughout the nation, throughout the world, and WURD TV, WURD app. Of course, I'm Charles Ellison. I'm your host, executive producer this Monday morning at the top of this Reality Check week. And hope everyone is doing well. Hope everyone had as much of a safe and enjoyable and relaxing weekend as they could have this past weekend. Definitely appreciate that. And just want to send out some reflections. It is Pearl Harbor Day, December 7, 1941. Very tragic moment that happened back then, which also sparked the beginning of America's entrance into World War II. So don't want to forget that. We do have those key dates that we cannot forget. Pearl Harbor, the attack by the Japanese on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor being one of those. We'll talk a little bit about that later on in the day. But first, at the top of this 10 o'clock hour, we want to talk with Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson. She is councilwoman at large, council member at large. Go to phlcouncil.com/Catherine Gilmore Richardson. She's also at Councilwoman KGR on social media, on Twitter more specifically, and she joins us by Skype here on Reality Check this Monday morning. How are you doing, Councilwoman?
I'm doing well. How are you?
All right, good, good. And if folks have questions for you, because I think there might be a few questions out there about their green recovery bill, feel free to call in with questions at 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check while we talk with Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson. So your so-called green recovery bill, and congratulations on that, because the resolution passed last Thursday. We heard that happen live, right on City Council Live, here on WURD. So it declares council's intent to, and I'm quoting some of it here, to prioritize climate action and environmental justice in the ongoing COVID-19 recovery efforts. So explain what that means, how you've made the connection between the impact of this pandemic and the need for a city to go green.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me, Charles. And first, I just want to thank you as the daughter of an Army veteran for recognizing Pearl Harbor Day and its significance in our country. So thank you so much for having me, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk about the important work we are doing in City Council relative to City Council's Committee on the Environment and how we are looking at our recovery as we move through COVID-19 and how we center the environment and climate change as a part of that recovery. So what we've realized is that COVID-19 has drastically upended most of our lives. And, you know, the same way climate change will upend our lives if it goes and continues to go unaddressed. So the Green Recovery Resolution is calling on the city to prioritize climate change and environmental justice in the ongoing COVID-19 recovery. And the idea for this resolution came from the work we've done with community groups and environmental advocates who all are a part of our Civilian Environmental Advisory Committee. And that committee consists of over 60 organizations across the city of Philadelphia, very diverse organizations who care about our environment and making a difference as it relates to climate change. So since Earth Day, we've been having very detailed discussions with those 60 groups. We've broken them down into 7 subcommittees. We have air quality, energy, waste, we have transportation, we have water, we have green economy, we have green space and energy. And we've been talking about looking at policy change in those specific areas, but more importantly, how we can use this moment around COVID-19 as a learning opportunity from a city perspective, because we've recognized that our climate crisis will be equally, if not more, disruptive than what we've seen in the past. So this resolution is simply meant to be a beginning starting point for our city to continue to develop a bold vision that we can use as a guide for our ongoing policy work as we recover through COVID-19.
Definitely you were saying for your ongoing policy work, and the resolution indicates that. It was saying that, or what I'm reading from the resolution again here, that you're going to use this resolution as a foundation for budget guidance. So people want to know about that budget guidance and the use of future COVID-19 related economic stimulus funds. So then I guess you can sort of recreate the city economy into something that's, as you're calling it, just and green recovery, creating new good green jobs, clean energy jobs. So since this isn't an ordinance, this is a resolution, it's just a sense of the council, which will, an ordinance would mandate something like this. But how do we kind of bake this in where it's a framework for what that guidance looks like? What does that budget guidance look like? Like on, I guess, what is it, like any bill that you or any of your colleagues introduce, it has some sort of environmental justice component to it? How can the council force the city to do something like this?
Sure. So as you know, Charles, and you hear every week, and I'm sure all the listeners who particularly listen on Thursdays know that we legislate and appropriate, and the administration spends the dollars that we appropriate in the specific areas. So what we are seeking to do is use this as a starting point for our conversations with the city's COVID-19 recovery team and the budget office to continue to identify legislative changes that will help us, deal with our climate in every city department. So you know that budget season starts in March, typically March each year. So we're working now with our team to get meetings scheduled with the COVID-19 recovery office, with our budget office, to figure out how we incorporate climate action and environmental justice into all the requests that we submit to the administration, as well as all the questions that we'll continue to ask each city department, which we did earlier this year in some of the earlier budget sessions, which was very truncated based on normal budget season. But also, I think it's important to note, so people don't think this is something that we're just thinking about, that last year, or even earlier this year in last budget session, my colleagues, Councilmember Derek Green and Jamie Gaudier, they asked all the departments to respond to questions on climate change and incorporate that into their testimony for each budget hearing. So, this I thought was a really good start on how we can ensure that each department comes with a response to the budget hearing on how they're incorporating and thinking about climate change in their budget requests. So in addition to us meeting with the budget office and working with the administration, we're also figuring out how we can make sure that all of our investments are the most efficient, and we continue to identify all of our clear priorities for any future stimulus spending, because that will be important. Any future dollars that potentially come to the city of Philadelphia, we must ensure that we are prioritizing how we think about climate change, because I often say, in Philadelphia, your zip code determines your life expectancy. And most often, those zip codes that are most adversely impacted by all the crises we're dealing with, specifically COVID-19, which disproportionately impacts Black and brown communities, those are the same communities that are dealing with climate change. Those are the same communities that are dealing with gun violence. So we have to start to think about this differently in advance and not continue to play catch up. So we have to start thinking about this differently.
And we talk about environmental justice and how all these issues, all these challenges that are plaguing Philly, how they all intersect with climate crisis issues. Even like now, gun violence. Gun violence is, if you think about it even more deeply, is an environmental justice issue, environmental racism issue. We do that through our onWURD project. In fact, this is pretty much an onWURD segment. How do we get, and part of that, and what we do is all about awareness and understanding. And so do you feel like the broader Philly community, especially the broader Black Philly community, understands that? Because one thing I noticed with during that public comments session on the Green Recovery Bill, with the exception of maybe one or two residents offering testimony on this, the public comment period last Thursday was an overwhelmingly white affair. From what I was seeing and listening. So environmental justice issues, they disproportionately impact Black people in Philly. but it just seems like we can't lead on this or be the main benefactors of this ambitious green or clean energy jobs agenda. Why is that? How do we
No,
fix
so
that?
no, and I understand what you're saying because I know that you listen to the council sessions, but I think it's really important to note that we have to make the connection for our Black and Brown communities and help them understand why this is so important. And I want to give you a quick story before I continue to answer your
Dan,
question.
even then, and real quick, I'm going to cut you off, Councilman, because I found it very profound. I thought it was kind of touching, but at the same, even your colleague, Councilwoman Sherelle Parker, she was saying she didn't know what urban heat islands were until she got engaged in this process and you taught her about what that was. And I found that very profound. I appreciated her admitting that, but she's not the only one. There are a lot of people in Philadelphia, Black people especially, who are on the front lines of this issue who don't know that it exists.
Absolutely. So I think it's important for us to do exactly what we're doing here today, continue to educate our communities about the impact of the environment. And I heard what you said relative to the individuals who provided public testimony, but I think it's important to note that that was not something that we, organically, that we coordinated. That happened
Right.
organically, and we appreciate all of the folks who provided testimony and them recognizing the importance of this issue. But it's education. It's exactly what we're doing now, getting the word out about why the environment, why climate change, why environmental justice is so important to African American communities. And I bring this up because it's an issue that we deal with knowingly or unknowingly in the African American community. When my family first came here and migrated to Philadelphia from the Carolinas in the early 1950s, they moved to North Philadelphia, like a lot of other Black families who came to Philadelphia. And they settled on a really tiny street called West Cybert Street. And it's a block in between Master Street and Thompson Street, but it's all concrete, no trees in sight. And my mom always talked about wanting to live on a block and raise her family in an area that had trees and, access to green space and parks. And, she talked about this in a way where she just simply wanted to live in a house that, had a lot of trees around it, right? And in that regard, she's talking about environmental justice and climate change, right? So when my parents first moved from Cyber Street, they lived at 33rd and Dolphin. And if you know anything about North Philadelphia, and if you know anything about 33rd and Diamond, you know that that's directly adjacent to the park area, not too far from Smith Playground. So this is back in the 70s, right? So my dad used to ride his bike in the park, and my mom said they loved to have picnics under the trees in the park. And again, it's a climate change environmental justice issue. Trees provide shade. That's where you go back to that question around the urban heat island impact and how communities that are on those small blocks, like where my family's from on West Cyber Street, your temperature on the index is much higher than other communities that have trees on their blocks because the trees provide tree canopy and shade for your community. So that's all climate change and environmental justice. I remember one of my other colleagues mentioning how our grandparents used to compost, right? When they would put all the meat in a bag and put it in the freezer, right? Before trash. That's a low level of composting in our residential homes. So I think we anecdotally are connected to these issues. We have to be educated on why they're so important and why we have to continue to be a part of this conversation so that we can have a role in what environmental justice looks like for our communities. On top of that, and I have to say this because when my parents moved from 33rd and Dolphin, they then moved to Winfield. Where I still live today and I'm raising my family. And if you know anything about Winfield, it's a very old neighborhood, first settled by Dr. Thomas Wynn, who was the physician to Benjamin Franklin and one of the early doctors at Pennsylvania Hospital, our nation's first hospital at 8th and Spruce. But that community has a lot of tree canopy. We have tons of trees. We have access to the Fairmount Park area. In fact, I can hear concerts at the Mann Music Center, from my house. So, my family moved to an area that had lots of trees, that, had tree canopy and access to parks. So we're interconnected to these issues. We just don't know it.
And speaking of that, like, speaking of trees, because and I recall on that just growing up in Philadelphia, and I grew up in the Logan section of North Philly, a little bit kind of the upper side of Philly, but had a few more trees on our block compared to trees as we get, you go further in towards Hunting Park and even deeper, and you did notice the temperature change when you and it was very dramatic. The city's going to be rolling out like this urban strategic or urban forest strategic implementation plan. That's going to need jobs, or it's going to need actual personnel to plant those trees. We have
Yeah.
also the city engaging in its ambitious solar installation program. That's going to you need to create jobs with that, or those are positions to get people to install those solar panels. How do this green and clean energy jobs programs, how do they match the black population in the city? That's one thing I know a lot of people wonder about. How do we take advantage of that kind of big dramatic shift that you're laying out here in that green recovery bill?
No, absolutely. And I think this is the most important part for me of the intersection around climate change, environmental justice, and doing something about the overwhelming amount of poverty we see in Philadelphia, but particularly in Black and Brown communities, because
Yeah.
individuals don't have access to family supporting and sustaining not just jobs, but career opportunities, things that can really help their families move ahead. So I think one thing we need to focus on is more of the job training and the career pipeline and pathway work that we need to do around workforce development, particularly around, in this moment with COVID-19, upskilling and reskilling individuals so that they are eligible for these jobs in solar. What we've seen is that solar is one of the fastest growing industries in our nation. And we need to focus on ensuring that we are growing clean, green energy jobs in Philadelphia, but connecting those who have been historically locked out to those opportunities. So some ways that we can do that is by having strong programs here in Philadelphia that focus on job training in these specific industries. So you're talking about programs like Power Corps, Routes to Reentry at the Philadelphia Horticultural Society. Some of those organizations have been doing this work, right? Energy Coordinating Agency, but we need to see a lot more growth here in order for this to be effective, for the communities we serve. So we have to, with all the policies we look at with our budgeting, we have to continue to create the demand for these job opportunities. And one instance would be our Green Cities Clean Waters program through the Water Department, right? That real strong strategic investment that will need additional job opportunities and mean job opportunities for a number of businesses who employ folks who live here in our city. But also we have the Energy Authority that was created under the leadership of our council president, Darrell Clark. And for the first time, they've partnered with the school district to create a solar career and technical education program. It's the first of its kind in the country, and it will be housed at Frankfurt High School. So, creating that pipeline for young people to have the opportunity to vie for those jobs, right? Also continuing to better understand what our future market demands are, meaning looking at our labor market indicators to determine, what jobs will be here in 5 years and 10 years, and then matching those up with skills programs, skills-based training and programs that ensure we have Philadelphians meeting the demands of our market in years to come. And that's all around the green topic.
Let me one last question there too, while I get you for another minute or two, Councilwoman. This is great. I like where this is headed. I like how this is being, that's why I was congratulating you in the morning. I was really excited about it when I heard about it on Thursday. The one thing that I'm concerned about, I know a number of other people are concerned about. One, it's just a resolution. It's not an ordinance, so we need that follow through. But council has approved these natural gas plants in North and Southwest Philly, and so it's like a lot of ways that a lot of past actions we've seen from council and this mayor. There's a lot of talk about going green, but it doesn't match, that rhetoric doesn't match the actual actions. I mean, how can you go green and clean when you're opening up new natural gas plants in Nicetown and Southwest Philly? And, we still don't know if the city's going to assess or look at redress or reparations for people that lived around the PES refinery. How do we reconcile that?
Sure, no, and I completely agree, which is why I really can't, understate how important it is for us to ensure that every city department comes before us with climate change and environmental justice in mind. And I completely agree with you that we have a number of neighborhoods and communities like the South Philadelphia community, like Nicetown and other communities who are still dealing with the impacts of decisions that were made, long before I became a member of Philadelphia City Council. But one thing I can say is you listen to what we say and then you watch what we do. And we are working diligently to ensure that this resolution is just the beginning of this conversation, and it's the beginning of additional legislative solutions and policies and bills that will be introduced to ensure that we are keeping our word. So to that I say, you listen to what we say, then you watch closely what we do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson, she's council member at large for the city of Philadelphia. Go to phlcouncil.com/Catherine Gilmore Richardson, at Councilwoman KGR on social media, on Twitter more specifically, where we are. She's been joining us here on Reality Check during the EcoWord session to talk about her green recovery bill. Definitely looking forward to more conversations, Councilwoman, and more interaction about this. I think this is really important. So really appreciate you doing this, and I'm sure we'll have you on soon again. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much, Charles, for having me. And I'd love to come back again, particularly when we have more programs around the environment, specifically with the intersection of workforce development. I think this will be key to how we can look at our recovery differently and how we help individuals upskill and reskill for these opportunities of the future. That's the key to decreasing the poverty that we continue to see in Philadelphia. And it's the key to how we create a cleaner, greener future for the city of Philadelphia, and how we can leave a better Philly to my children who are 4, 6, and 15 than we found it today.
All right. Okay. Councilwoman, take care. Have a good one. Be safe out there. All right. Take care. All right. Let's take a break. And when we come back on the other side, we're headed into our Reality Check Roundtable session, which happens here on Mondays at the same time. So let's take a break, and we'll be back with Danielle Moody and David Seaton on a roundtable on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM. WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
What's up, everyone? I know you know the word, no, not the station, but this word, J-O-B, that is. And our friends at Amoroso's Baking Company are hiring right now. Amoroso's has been baking the delicious bread in our community for over 100 years, and they want you to join their team today. The old and the young love Amoroso's, and they are hiring right now. Check it out. They offer fair pay and provide health, dental, and prescription plans after 90 days employment. Call 856-754-0355 or visit amorososbaking.com for details.
Man, this coronavirus has us all moving differently.
No doubt. Like washing our hands more and social distancing with the crew. I'm always telling people to give me 6 feet. We're here, Grandmom.
There's my babies. Good to see you got your mask on.
Wear mask. Stop the spread. For more information, visit www.pa.gov/COVID.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
He's back.
This is Reverend Al Sharpton.
Keeping it real with the Reverend Al Sharpton.
In times like these, we have to stay connected.
At a brand new time.
Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight.
I'm excited that Keeping It Real returns to WURD.
Keeping it real.
With the Reverend Al Sharpton.
Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight.
This program is pre-recorded.
No phone calls, please.
Keep it locked to WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM. WURDradio.com.
Reality Check
with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
All right, we're back at it in our roundtable session, which happens this time every Monday here on Reality Check. We're on 96.1 FM, 900 AM in Philly proper, but beyond throughout the nation and the world, we are at WURDradio.com. Many of you listening in that way, also watching us on WURD TV and WURD app. Once again, I'm Charles Ellison. I'm your host, executive producer, and I am on Twitter at Ellison Report on Twitter.com, hashtag Reality Check. You can capture glimpses of the conversation we just had with Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson at hashtag EcoWord, as we were talking about her green recovery bill that she just passed last week. We'll continue to have conversations about that with City Council and other folks, because it's just really important. So we need to continue, like we do here we prioritize that conversation daily on WURD, that conversation around environmental justice at EcoWord.com. That's our environmental justice journalism initiative. Joining us now for our roundtable session, as they do occasionally, frequently, is Danielle Moody, who is host of Woke AF, hashtag Woke AF. Go to @D2Cents. I go there quite a bit myself, always inspired and encouraged, and definitely in awe of her passion. So you can do that. You can check her out at D2Cents. She's very, very engaged. Also, David Seaton, who is host of the Buchanan Seaton Show on WVON Chicago. That's our partner station up there, WRD's partner station. You can find him at David A. Seaton. Ready for our roundtable. How are you both doing?
Good, good. How are you doing?
Excellent, excellent. So I think we got Danielle in New York, David in Chicago. Here we are in Philly, so we might as well just do the playoffs or something. I mean, might as well just have at it. So, but not Eagles don't look so well these days, though. Let me start with you, Danielle. I really want to flesh out this conversation over defund the police. I don't think we've had an opportunity to do that just yet, because it seems like we're heading into 2021 as a collective Black political community talking about just that, it seems. And there's a real clash. I mean, the camps are divided almost like North and South Korea, like without the DMZ, right? And it's very troubling. It's very concerning. At some point, we're going to have to find like some common ground on this conversation. How do we do that?
I'm so glad that you brought this up, because since former President Obama made his comments with regard to defunding the police and how it is not a message that is going to win, it has re-sparked and re-engaged both camps of this conversation. And I think that what is troubling here is that our issues span so far beyond the criminal justice system, so far beyond police, that I think that it is obviously incredibly important for us to be engaging in conversation about what we need to do about policing. I just saw earlier, over the weekend, of a MAGA march that happened with the Proud Boys, and the police showed up to create a barricade to give them cover. Right, as the opposition, those that believe that Black lives actually matter, showed up in a counter protest. The police were protecting the Proud Boys. And so it's a very real conversation about where our tax dollars are going as it pertains to who is supposed to be protecting and serving us. But I feel like we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We have to have expansive conversations about all of the things that are needed right now in order to make the Black community who pays taxes feel safe in their own community.
I like how you frame that. Danielle, walk and chew gum at the same time, because there is a two-front war here. I feel like, and David, I want to get your thoughts on this. I'm with that cause. Like, I really am with that cause of completely, fundamentally re-altering and overhauling policing in America as we know it. Like, don't even call it policing anymore, right? And just totally eliminating we have to get Danielle to make sure that she's. Can you hear us, Danielle? Yeah. Okay. There we go. Yeah. Just making sure that we that we have like maybe it's public safety, but I feel like we need to reconfigure. Just someone needs to go back to the table just for a few minutes and just remix that phrase. That's it. So we can kind of move forward, and then we can have, as Danielle was saying, David, we can walk and chew them at the same time. We can fight a true front war here. But go ahead, David.
It's interesting that you bring this up. We just had this conversation on WVON on our show on Friday night, and my position is really simple. African Americans, we are just 12% of the population. We live in a democracy. We have to create allegiances so that we can get to 50% plus one votes, so that we can enact the change that we want to see. So as long as we're using language, like President Obama said in his interview with Charlemagne the God in his radio show, as long as we're using language that subtracts and doesn't add, we can have the moral high ground and we can have the morally superior position, but we're not going to see the policy changes that we want to see. One last point, and I think this is really instructive. I used the example on Friday on our show that said, imagine we weren't saying defund the police, we were saying defund the fire department. If we said defund the fire department, the average person would reflexively respond by thinking, well, who do I call when I have a fire? And that's where we are right now when we say defund the police. It's not that it's not a morally defensible position, but there's a better way to communicate that if our end goal is to create those allegiances that we need to get a majority to enact the policy changes that we want to see.
Yeah, it's all about intersection, Danielle. You know, 2 questions here. We got a 2-front war also, because I worry that we're going to be so immersed in this debate and discussion, it's going to be a Twitter time suck to the point where we're not going to be able to focus on other issues, one, in the way that we need to, and then 2, there's some heavy spikes in violent crime in all the major cities where there's a high concentration of Black people because the poverty that's happened as a result of pandemic. I mean, we're about to reach 500 homicides here in Philly alone, which is we're going to be higher than New York City's rate, and y'all are a city of 8 million, right? So I worry about, and that's killing mostly Black people. I just was in Washington D.C., a 15-month-old boy killed by a bullet. And then in Philly, we had 12 and 14-year-old boys within a span of 2 weeks. So you see where I'm headed with that. It's like, you know, we've got to get real quick. We got to pivot into a health, wealth, education, quality of life conversation. In addition to, hey, listen, we got to reform the police here, because we shouldn't be fighting all these multiple fronts and then we can't even trust the police. But go ahead, Danielle.
Yeah, you know, I just, the place that we are in, the place that this country is in, that this current administration has brought us to, I can't overstate enough how dangerous it is. Because we have not had economic investment into our communities because of this pandemic. We are right now grappling still between the Democrats and Republicans to provide relief with our own tax dollars to the people to the hardworking people of this country. If you look at other places that have provided pandemic relief, places in Europe have been giving people, right, monthly stipends of at least, on average, $2,500 to $3,000. Do you understand? And we gave Americans $1,200 and said, good luck. And that was it. And only some Americans got that money. So of course, you're going to have areas that are, you know, that already are facing many economic hurdles. Now that being exacerbated because there is no relief and there's no relief in sight. The House entered into a conversation with the Senate at a $3 trillion number for a relief package that would cover all of the needs, from small business to individuals to continuing with paycheck protection to continuing with some type of renter support and all of these things. And Republicans struck it down, right? So we have to elevate. I think that it's so great, Charles, what you do, because we have to elevate the fact that, because Congress is failing us, because this administration is failing us, our communities are crumbling under the weight of multiple pandemics that, folks, if we all understand, was actually preventable, right? Yeah. We didn't have to be here. This was not a matter of fact. This was a matter of ignorance. This was a matter of negligence that we find ourselves in this place. But if we don't have these conversations out in the open like we're doing, then people think that, oh, all is okay. We're just homeschooling and virtual learning and all of these things and working from home, and that's the normal. It's not, right? Yeah. We are in the midst of a mental health crisis. You know that suicides are up about 30% right now. So all of these things are connected to the failure of our government to support the most vulnerable among us. And these are conversations that we need to be having, not just these siloed things about whether or not we defund the police who are killing us, right? Because there are so many different aspects of this society that, in fact, are killing us.
Yeah. And David, good points, Danielle. And David, real quick, let's explore that conversation, because Daniel made a good point about how Congress, you had the House Democrats, they did pass a $3.4 trillion CARES Act, bill. It just sat on the Senate Majority Leader's desk. We went from $3.4 trillion in May to now $908 billion. We under $1 trillion. And so, so I guess that's supposed to be the bridge. I mean, how much confidence do you have, David, in, like, when you talk to people in Chicago, how much confidence do they have in that being an adequate enough bridge? Because that's the whole purpose of the $908 billion compromise that's being discussed on Capitol Hill. There seems to be some encouraging signs about it. We don't know, because there's the wild card of President Trump, who created the pandemic. I've always said that. President Trump created the pandemic. But is that adequate enough? Do people have that kind of confidence to know that that will bridge us to the type of robust muscular recovery? Because really, if this had been done right, we should have been having $10 to $15 trillion. And if we really wanted to get through this as unscathed as possible, I mean, we've barely scratched the surface with just over $2 trillion. Go ahead, David.
No, those are all great points. Everything that I've read is saying that $908 billion that they're discussing right now does not include direct payments. Yeah. That's just talking about money that's going to be going to business. That's talking about, it's a repeat basically of the PPE. It's just the PPE, disguised as, the CARES Act, which is unfortunate. I still haven't come to a definitive conclusion, however, if the best solution right now is to just send money directly to people, or to send money to employers and let those employers pay their people, because then you're shoring up two groups at the same time. You're shoring up the employers and the employees. We already know the data says that, a very high percentage, over 50% of businesses aren't going to survive into 2021. And a lot of small businesses, they were looking forward to, businesses across the span the gamut, they were looking towards Black Friday and Christmas holiday to see if they were even going to be able to have a model that survives into 2021. So, but all of us sitting on this call and everyone listening knows who really the culprit is in all of this, and that's Mitch MCConnell. Mitch MCConnell has not been invested. I mean, as soon as they passed Amy Coney Barrett onto the Supreme Court, the Senate went on holiday break. In the middle of all this. So that's why it's real. I mean, if we want to see anything done that's going to help people, especially African Americans, going into 2021, these Senate races, these runoffs in Georgia are so important. I cannot stress how important it is that we get to 50% and and that Kamala Harris is the deciding vote, the tiebreaker in the Senate in 2021.
Yeah, no, it's going to be real important. Hold on, two of you. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll have more Danielle Moody, more David Seaton here on the D&D, here on our roundtable session on Monday here on Reality Check. And also the time right now is 10:41, and the temperature in Philadelphia is 36 degrees. This is sponsored by the Beach Companies, serving the community for 30 years. For more information, check out beachcompanies.com. I'm Charles Ellison. We got Danielle Moody, also David Seaton here on our roundtable. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Come smile with Champion Dentistry, the house of smiles. Champion Dentistry has been helping to create, maintain, and accentuate healthy, beautiful smiles for over 30 years. Come have your teeth, gums, and smile checked out with the WURD Cleaning Special. Call now at 215-473-4717 to get your Champion smile, or visit them at 1170 North 63rd Street.
Listen to Laborers Live.
We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
To people that might have forgot how important unionism is in a country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour workday, kind of work people more than 8 hours without overtime, kind of work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting a fat paycheck except the worker. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity.
Local 332, Sam Staten Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staten, Executive Director of LESIT.
The WURD Radio Newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting wordradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on WURD Radio, messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax Reese, exclusive articles and multimedia content, and resources. Stay informed with the WURD Radio newsletter. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to the roundtable session here on Reality Check. We do this every Monday. This is our Monday exercise. We got two of our esteemed panelists, or roundtablists, our roundtablists, as I like to call them, Daniel Moody of hashtag WokeAF. Go to @D2Cents and get more information. Check out our podcast, hashtag WokeAF, and also David Seaton of the Buchanan and Seaton Show on our partner station up there in Chicago, WVON Radio, other Black Talk Radio. That's Black Talk Radio in Chicago and Chi-Town. Always good to connect with them. We're here on WURD's Reality Check. I do want to ask about before I want to get into this other topic. This conversation, Daniel, I'll go with you. This conversation about, are there enough Black faces on the cabinet? And I understand, as someone, I've worked on Capitol Hill. I understand, and I've worked on state, local, federal government levels, and I understand the importance and significance of that representation in the room. But it just seems like, I don't know, it seems like Black leadership or Black political leadership is going about this the wrong way. I'm not so concerned about the number of Black faces in the room, and this is just me, so feel free to push back on it. I feel like, what's the agenda? I don't know what the agenda is. What's the Black agenda heading into 2021?
And to me, Charles, that's the question. I would prefer us be discussing that rather than how many Black faces are inside of the cabinet. I think that it's incredibly important, look, that we have representation, that he is creating a diverse representation of America, which I think that the Biden-Harris team so far with their announcements is doing. I like the people that are coming out that are going to be competent leaders, patriots, and really care about the American people. But at the end of the day, what I think is most important is for us to have a Black agenda. It's for it to be clear, not something that is up on a website, but that the Biden-Harris team doesn't discuss in mixed company. And that, to me, has always been the problem, which is why way back when, BC, before COVID, when we were in the primaries, we were having a conversation with Senator Elizabeth Warren, and she had a plan for Black America, from HBCUs to the Black mothers' maternity mortality rate, to economic investment and so on and so forth. So that is the conversation that I want to see. And I want to see it out front and center, because for the community that made a Biden-Harris administration happen, we deserve to have our needs placed front and center. And so that, to me, needs to be what our leadership in the CBC and in other places need to be worrying themselves about. I don't care so much for black faces in white spaces. I just want a Black agenda that is in the forefront, because we know that when the most marginalized of us succeeds, we all succeed.
Yeah, David, that's the thing. Like, this is like an old school strategy. Like, that's the kind of conversation we had back in like the 70s or the 80s. Do we have enough Black faces on? Or, either during the 70s during the Carter administration, or the 90s with the Clinton administration. Are there Black faces on there yet? And every now and then we want to make sure the Republican administration sprinkle Black faces on it. It's just such an old, antiquated strategy. And I feel like I don't care about a Black first or whether there's a Black face in the room. I just want to know, can this administration adequately, no, not even adequately, robustly address our issues and our challenges?
No, great point, Saul. It's important for diversity of thought that you have a diversity of representation in the room. And again, based on everything that I've seen so far, it's always funny to me, because you do have, there are some people out there that wouldn't be happy unless 100% of the cabinet was Black. We had somebody who called into our show on Friday and said that they heard that Biden was mandating that people who get Section 8 and food stamps would have to take the vaccine, which again isn't true, but it made me think, okay, well, you're saying that if Biden puts us at the front of the line, that you're suspect because they're using us as guinea pigs, but if they put us at the back of the line, then they don't care. So, with some people, with some groups, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, in that regard.
I want to get into that conversation. David makes a good point, Danielle. I didn't anticipate getting into this, but we'll take a few minutes on it. The vaccine.
Yes.
We got this COVID collaborative poll survey came out. Only 14% of Black Americans trust a coronavirus vaccine. That's compared to 34% of Latinos. So when you look at all the polls, when they're kind of gauge public opinion on these vaccines, the Black demographic is the most likely to say either I don't trust it, I don't want to take it. That's a real problem. How do we have this? How do we gently sort of navigate our way into this vaccine conversation?
I think that the important thing that we need to do is actually to understand and present the reasons why Black Americans are hesitant about a vaccine, right? Anytime that we have been in conversation with the medical industry, it is always to our detriment, right? Like these are historical things. So I think, one of the things that has been bothering me is that I watch on cable news shows, that they talk about how Black people don't want to take the vaccine, and they kind of leave it there as if we have a hesitancy and we're making it up. Like, we're not making it up. We have been used as guinea pigs since the beginning of slavery and throughout the history of these United States. And so the Biden-Harris administration is going to have a lot of work to do to assuage the very real fears that Black people have about taking anything that the government has put their hands on. And so while I think, when we hear people say, oh, Black folks should be at the front of the line, I'm like, no, why don't we see what kind of side effects it has for you, as opposed to putting us at the front of the line? And then, oh, look, this first round of vaccines, not that great, right? Lots of side effects. So I think that there's a lot of research that needs to be done, but there's a lot of conversation, right, that needs to happen with our community about what is in the vaccine, what are the possible side effects, how they're going to be able to get it, where they're going to go, and a place for them to air their grievances and their concerns that are very real and founded.
Yeah, I think you're right. And David, I don't think we're having that conversation at a serious level yet, right? I think people are just sort of glossing over the fact that this is a real, because I don't want it to get to the point where the vaccine is mandated, because it's going to get to that point. People are still going to have to take the vaccine. Like, you're not going to be able to step on an airplane. You're not going to be able to step on even a bus or a you're not going to be able to get a job unless you are it's going to be like how when our kids go to school, you got to present those vaccination records. That's the kind of environment we're going to start heading into, where people who don't trust the vaccine, they'll have no choice but to take it, and it shouldn't have to be that way. How do we have this conversation a little bit more seriously or elevated?
You know what? I love Danielle. I love her passion.
Me too.
I have had these conversations, and like I said, as recently as Friday, and I try to be cognizant of the fact that there is some trepidation in our community. That said, this is not an antigen-based vaccine. This is not inert genetic data that's being put in. That you're getting an inert or a weakened form of the virus. This is a messenger RNA-based type of vaccine that really, if you understand this, if you just have a layperson's understanding of biology and molecular or just DNA, you will understand that messenger RNA, the way that this vaccine is being delivered, there is no possibility of, oh, they've got a vial over here for Black people that they're going to give them to kill them. And we had people calling in saying that this is eugenics and this is population control, and while we as African Americans, like I said, have every reason to have some trepidation, we have to measure that with facts and being thoughtful and being knowledgeable about what's going on today. We can't continue to use the Tuskegee experiment and Henrietta Lacks as reasons that we don't go to the doctor until we go to the emergency room. Then when we go to the ER, we don't have a chart and somebody misdiagnoses us, and then we want to holler racism. You can't have it both ways. This is an mRNA-based technology for this vaccine. It is completely different from any other vaccine that we've administered in the past. And I think the more people educate themselves, that should assuage some of their concerns.
Yeah, yeah. You know, switching on education, right? And there's that literacy piece, because we've been dealing with an infodemic as much as a pandemic. And I think one of the reasons that we have, and maybe, you know, next time we'll expound on this when we bring it back, but I want to kick off this discussion because I've been having quite a bit of it over the past couple of weeks on this program. Illiteracy. 54% of adults in the United States cannot read above a 6th grade level. So that leads to issues like this. Not understanding, like David, like you need to send the pharmaceutical companies your bill. So you just like broke that down in just like 2 minutes. Like it's, hey, this is, I didn't even know that. I didn't even realize, like, I haven't gone that in depth into the science. But that's $2.2 trillion in lost GDP, Danielle, and we are not talking about the illiteracy crisis. We wonder, like, why are people tripping out on social media? Why do they spread conspiracy theories? Well, it may deal with the fact that most Americans can't read above a 6th grade level. And it's even worse. It's over a quarter of African Americans. It's disproportionate to our population that can't read. And that's a problem. And we need those. That's one of those structural issues I need folks like the Congressional Black Caucus, for example, to focus on. But go ahead, Danielle.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you that those numbers to me are absolutely startling and terrifying. One of the conversations that I have, you know, consistently on my show is that we have to understand that our public education system is a product of white supremacy. It's how we keep it in place, right? We don't teach our history. We don't teach certain things. We whitewash a lot of things, and we leave people out of that conversation. And the fact is that misinformation has been able to spread because of how poor our public education system is, right? Yeah. Because we don't teach civics. We're not invested in literacy. We're not invested in these things. And as a matter of fact, we've grown into a country that, thanks to Donald Trump, Trumpism, and the Tea Party, we celebrate ignorance, right? The more education you have, the more elite you are seen to be. And so you are put in this box over here. I think that this is absolutely yet another pandemic that we are dealing with here, which is our undereducation, right? Yeah. And what that feeds into, because what it does is that it allows the 1% to keep their thumb on the scale and their knees on our back, right? As the worker class, because they're the ones that fundamentally understand the ins and outs of systems that they have created. So I think that education is something, again, in this incoming Biden-Harris administration, that I want to see a deep investment in, because if you want to talk about what's been defunded over the past several years, it has been education. Our public education system has been consistently defunded over decades and decades. And the damage that has been done by Betsy DeVos over the past 4 years, right, is something that we're talking about, generational damage having been done of the siphoning off of public funds. So, you know, these are very real conversations to have and very real issues. And I agree with you. I would love to see the CDC, instead of talking about, you know, again, black faces in white spaces, I would love us to be talking about the underlying issues that we have as a community, that if we were to build steadier foundations, we could grow from there.
Yeah, David, is that I would imagine that that's a problem in Chicago. That's been a problem in Chicago for quite some time, right? That illiteracy rate. But it's just, once again, but we tend to take it for granted, and then we're in the middle of a pandemic where D's and F's are being daily, routinely doled out to our kids, disproportionately black kids. And that was already happening before pandemic. It's gotten worse during the pandemic. But go ahead, David.
No, I had some consulting done when on my blog, SeatonSpeaks.com, and the consultant actually told me, hey, the average reading comprehension out there is 8th grade reading. So she was trying to tell me to kind of scale back some of my, stop using the LSAT words in the titles if I want to attract, more people. This is one of those things, however. And again, I don't want to be the contrarian in the conversation. Certainly, there are structural and systemic improvements that we can make in education so that we can address the illiteracy rate out there. That said, every kid is walking around today with a smartphone. So we've gone through a paradigm shift. When all of us sitting on this call, we can all, remember growing up and learning about the Dewey Decimal System when we go to the library and how to check out a book, and we had the encyclopedia, the World Book encyclopedias in our home. These kids today are walking around with computers that they can pull out at any time and ask a question, and they will be given the answer in real time. How do I spell this word? What does this mean? What's the capital of Zimbabwe? They don't have to, so I think it's important for us to, while everything we're talking about in terms of what's going on in formal education is important, we need to do a better job of impressing upon our youth how to leverage and optimize the technology that they are walking around with. They have no problem with tweeting. They have no problem with Snapchatting and posting on Facebook. We need to re-emphasize that you can use this same technology to learn.
Yeah. We can talk, David. I'm going to give you the last word here because we got to break out. David Seaton, WVO Win Buchanan Seaton Show in Chicago, and in New York is Danielle Moody, who is host of #WokeAF. Go to @D2Cents for more information. Go on social media. She's @DDEE2Cents on Twitter. David is @David A. Seaton, @David A. Seaton. Also on Twitter, where we stay engaged here on Reality Check. Always enjoy our roundtablists on these Monday mornings. Thank you both. Please stay safe out there and happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holidays to both of you.
Same to you.
Take
Same
care.
to you guys.
All right. Bless. Okay, let's take a quick break, and when we come back on the other side, we're supposed to head into a CAP corner. We do that each week as well with our partners at the Center for American Progress. Alex Tasanovich is coming on to talk about the census. What's going on with that, in fact? There's so much confusion around this one, but let's take a break, and we'll talk about the census when we come back here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Jefferson Health offers no-cost COVID-19 testing sites at St. Raymond of Pinafort Church. Testing is on Thursdays and Saturdays. A second testing location has been added at Richard Allen Preparatory Charter School. Testing is on Wednesdays and Fridays. For testing hours and more information, call 1-833-533-3463.
This is not a fad for us.
We will not resume our regular programming when things die down. We're not black to help our bottom line or because it's politically correct. We're not joining a fight. This has been our fight, our message, our people. Black lives have always mattered here. We are
undeniably,
indefatigably, unapologetically, permanently Black Talk Media.
WURD.
WURD Radio presents the following wellness tip to support our listeners with mindfulness and motivation
as we continue to navigate the pandemic together.
Hi, this is Halana, your resident health and wellness coach with tips to help you stay well. We breathe every day and have been doing so since before we were born. But wait, let's think about this for a moment. Something as simple as breathing can enhance our health and well-being. When we breathe mindfully, we slow down, take deep breaths, and activate our parasympathetic system to relax our bodies. Mindful breathing goes like this. Number 1, find a comfortable place to sit still for a few minutes. Number 2, close your eyes and relax your hands on your thighs. Number 3, take a deep breath in and count to 3. Then exhale your breath and count to 3. Do this 5 times. We sometimes think mindful breathing has to be an intense experience, yet even just a few minutes a day can make a big difference. Go ahead and try it today. Stay well with WURD. Happy living.
Stay well with WURD. Connect with us at WURDradio.com. Lifting every voice
till earth and heaven ring.
This is WURD Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia.
Black Talk Media. Reality Check.
With Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
All right. I love Halana's mindful breathing exercises between like every break. I need more of those. I need more mindful breathing. She is so on point with that because I find myself just actually starting to want to do mindful breathing, and then it's done. Then I got to get back into the segment. But I really appreciate those vignettes about wellness because we could all use that, especially in these days and times. Joining us for our CAP Corner, our weekly CAP Corner, who we do with our partners in Washington, D.C. at the Center for American Progress, AmericanProgress.org. For more information, by the way, is Alex Tasanovich. He is a senior fellow there, does a lot of work, focuses on topics such as governance, and we've had him on. We talked about gerrymandering and other issues, and we're here to talk about this census and why that's important. What's going on with that exactly? Because there's just so much confusion around it. Alex Tasanovich back with us here on Reality Check, and he's joining us on WURD TV by Skype. Alex, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
All right, excellent. Did I get that right? You're a senior fellow there at CAP? I always forget the titles.
Director of Campaign Finance and Electoral Reform.
Okay, excuse me for that. So, because it's like you're more elevated. There's nothing wrong with being a senior fellow, but Director of Campaign Finance and Electoral Reform. So that's good to know. AmericanProgress.org for more information. Alex always doing some good work and research. What do we know right now, Alex, about what's going on with the census? Because it looks really confusing. Like one day there's a deadline, and so we think this is all wrapped up, like the census has been done. And then the next day we find out that, oh, there's some like court case, there was a new decision, and it's just been extended. No, it's really not. So I feel like this seems like a stupid question, but I really should ask it because so many other people are asking it. Like, are we still taking the census?
Well, there is a lot we don't know.
Yeah.
But what we do know is this. The census happened this year during a pandemic, and it faced a lot of challenges. There was a 3-month delay before they could even start sending people door to door to collect census data. And amidst those challenges, rather than asking for an extension of the deadlines to give the census more time to make sure that they count every single American, the Trump administration said, no, we're going to rush the census. We're going to reverse our request for more time and say, we need to get this done even faster. And the reason they did that is that it appears that they want to be able to control the census data and particularly to control the data that is used for apportionment of representation in Congress. And that deadline is currently the end of the year. And they want to hit that end of the year deadline so that the Trump administration can be the one that decides how many Congress people each state gets.
Yeah. I mean, that's really what it all boils down to. It's all about political power.
Right.
I think I was, and I kind of fault the media for this a little bit, mainstream media primarily. The way this is framed, that point is not being stressed. And I say mainstream media, American media, because I noticed the contrast one day. I was reading an Economist article, in The Economist, and in the headline they were like, they established that right away. This is about congressional seats and power. This is a grab for that, like through just muffling up the census issue, right? And but here we don't get that. People don't really understand. I want to get into that awareness, that census literacy piece in a few minutes, Alex. But why is this an every 10-year exercise? I wonder about that. I remember having this conversation with a nonprofit that was being given some funds to help carry out the census, to do some training, put people out in a certain city to do the census. And they were like, can't we just do this every year? Can't we just do this all year round, every year? Why does this have to be like every 10 years? We wait 10 years and then, on the 9th year, that's when we reactivate the census. Why is that the case?
Well, the reason it's every 10 years, the most direct reason is that the Constitution says that we have to do a census at least every 10 years.
Right.
But we do some surveys that are more limited in between the censuses, the American Community Survey, for example. But the census is an enormous undertaking. Counting all 300 million plus Americans is a really big job. And the Census Bureau spends a lot of that 10-year time planning for it. In fact, the Census Bureau, next year, they should already be starting to plan for the 2030 census because it is very, very difficult to have a survey of the scale. It's one of the biggest surveys of population in the world. And like you said, it really matters, so it's important to get it right.
Yeah, no, it really is. And that with this not happening every year, it happening as at least on the community level, because that's where I think the problem is, and that's where you have that disconnect where you have like low participation rates or as they say, like hard to reach areas. What do we know about that? What have you been seeing with that, Alex, as far as like the participation? Was it, even despite the pandemic, there was a lot of like PSAs, a lot, in addition to, we had like a lot of the public information and campaigning that was going on with respect to the elections. People did see a lot with respect to the census. They were like, oh, there's this other thing I've got to do. I got to vote, but I also got to take the census. Was that successful to some degree? Did it even despite the pandemic?
Well, it looks like, we have some very, very capable people working at the Census Bureau, and it looks like they did do a pretty good job getting the word out about the census, as did their nonprofit partners. We still don't know very much about the quality of the data. We know enough to be concerned, but there's still a lot we don't know. But what typically happens when you rush a process like this is that the people who are difficult to count don't get counted.
Yeah.
And in the case of the census, that's often people who are living in very large households and urban environments, people who are in extremely rural environments. So you tend to undercount rural people, you tend to undercount communities of color, you tend to undercount low-income people. And we expect that a lot of those people are undercounted. We're already seeing, as they process the data, that places where there are a lot of people living in apartment buildings or where there are a lot of people living in college dorms, for example, it was very difficult for census enumerators to go into those places because of the coronavirus. So there's a major concern that those places have been undercounted.
What do you think, Alex? I think that the undercounts could be as dramatic as they were in 2010.
Yeah, they could be even more dramatic. And on the other side of the coin, the Census Bureau usually takes a lot of time after they've done the count to make sure that the data is correct. And one of the things they do then is they look for overcounts, because for some of the same reasons that it's hard to count the people I just mentioned, it is easy to count wealthier, whiter communities. Some people in those communities have multiple homes. Some people have the means to have moved during the coronavirus, and therefore they're getting counted in two different places. And that has just as big an impact on reducing the representation of the other communities, those overcounts. So it's really important, too, that the census have the time after the count to look at the data and remove duplicates and do the other processing that they need to do.
And it depends on, it definitely, I agree with you, those wider, wealthier, more affluent neighborhoods, or neighborhoods that could be, so I live in a suburb. It's mostly black people that live in that suburb / space. Everyone was aware of the census. And you even had like a couple of neighbors who were like representing the census, and they were going up and down the block, connecting with all of us, and they know us. Everyone knows each other, black neighbors. Hey, did you take the census? And, one neighbor, he's got his I guess it was like an iPad or electronic clipboard, actually taking, whoever was missed or didn't, forgot to send their stuff back in or take it online. He's like, oh, I got you handled on that. So, a lot of it, definitely race has a lot to do with it, or is predetermining what this result is going to be. But it's also like kind of it's geography, it's zip code, right? So, and we have had, majority black suburbs in places like Atlanta or Washington, D.C. or elsewhere, where we might see, we could see overcounts in those respects compared to, however, black and brown communities as you get deeper into a city, whether that's in Philly or in D.C. or elsewhere, or Atlanta or New York or elsewhere. So that's going to be a real problem, because then you're right. Then even the census counters themselves, they're afraid of getting infected. So they're like, I'm not going in that apartment building. I mean, so we might have had cases like that. How do we, I guess, like, fix this in such a way, right, Alex? I mean, I'm thinking about efficacy here as far as the census is concerned. I like the fact that they were rolling out, they gave out this online option, because it was real easy. I mean, once you got, but I just think the rollout was a bit, it was a bit clumsy, the rollout, in terms of, oh, you got to wait till you get this thing in the mail before you can. And I think as we got closer to the deadline, then they found a rhythm, a stride. I hope the next census is a little bit easier. Or maybe, hey, listen, we kind of had such a problem here with the 2020 census. We need to extend this thing. I know you all have talked about Congress activating some kind of census extension law. Where is that right now? And could something like that work to really fix the census, and not just for 2020, but for the duration?
Yeah, well, there's currently there's a bill called the 2020 Census Deadline Extension Act in Congress. It has 4 Democratic and 4 Republican sponsors, so it's a bipartisan bill. And that bill would give the Census Bureau an additional 4 months on each of its deadlines to submit census data, which is really important. It's not clear if that bill will move in the immediate future. We have a very gridlocked Congress and a very limited time in the lame duck session to get things done. But our hope is Congress will take that up and act. But regardless of what Congress does, the next administration is going to need to come in early, make census a priority, and they're going to have to go and look at that data and say, like, what are the errors? What are the things that were rushed? And therefore, we have places where we don't have accurate data. And how do we fix that as quickly as possible? Because we need some kind of data to start drawing new congressional districts, Congress, and we use that data for a host of other purposes, like allocating federal funds. Over $1.5 trillion in federal funds annually is allocated on a formula using a census. And that's the kind of thing where what you were talking about with the overcounting the suburbs and undercounting the city, that can shift things like coronavirus relief funding can go to more to the suburbs and less to the city, and people who need it aren't getting it. So it's really important that the new administration come in and make sure that the numbers are correct.
Yeah. Is the president-elect, is Biden saying anything about the census, as important as this is?
Yeah, I'm not sure that he has made a statement particular to the census just yet. It's not the kind of public issue that so many people are familiar with that, it's not something you're going to campaign on, but I am confident that he's aware of this issue. And it's really a matter of, is it going to get prioritization in terms of the things that there's going to be so many problems that the Biden-Harris administration has to address, has to really hit the ground running on. And the census is just not a thing that a lot of people have front of mind. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that they hit the ground running on this and fix the census data that we have now that we're concerned about, and also make sure that we're in a good place, like you said, for the next census, that we're prepared, that we do more testing of those online surveys to make sure that they work smoothly and people understand them, and that we have, a world-class census. The census is something that's important to government. It's also important to the economy. Businesses decide where to locate their new factories, new expanded business. The census is really important to keeping the economy running too. And so for all of those reasons, it needs to be a priority.
Yeah, that's the problem here. Is the lack of awareness, the lack of literacy around the census. It's hard, right? I mean, how do we put urgency around something like this? People don't understand it. They know it's something that they have to take. And I, a lot of people I would watch kind of taking it, or I would hear about taking it, like, oh, I got to do this thing. Like, it was irritating. It was something like, oh, one more thing I got to do, one more form I've got to fill out. And they don't participate in it as significantly as they should. And so that in turn doesn't put pressure on the lawmakers. And I really feel like this is that issue that should. But I mean, how do we get there as far as that public awareness piece? Even the conversation we're having, it's hard. I've had these conversations multiple times about the census, and I just wonder if, like, I'm having it in such a way that's really getting through to people. Hey, this is really critical right here. Like, 3 things we need to do, and I've said this all year. You got to vote, you got to pay your taxes, but you got to take the census.
Yes, absolutely. I think, the thing that I've been saying to people is this affects the amount of power you have in Congress. This affects the amount of federal funding that your community gets. This affects the amount of investment by private businesses that your community gets. And this affects even things like local government planning. It affects how the roads and schools that state and local governments build, because it really is, at the bottom, the census is the record of every American. And if you're not counted in the census, then as far as business and government is concerned, you don't exist. Your community is smaller and less significant than it should be. And so it's critical that people get counted. Its public understanding is very helpful for making sure that there's pressure on Congress and on the president to do an accurate census. And it's also just important that people understand we need people in government who take these important government functions seriously and are not using them for their own private political benefit. And so capable government really matters.
No, it really does. So, I mean, the movement now is not, before it was take the census, but now it's extend the census. Like right now, people who are listening, and if they're really concerned about, everyone, first of all, it shouldn't be if you're concerned. You should be concerned about this issue. And so, being that you should be concerned about this issue, I guess, Alex, the real, I guess the sort of action item here or big ask is people need to start calling their members of Congress and saying, hey, we need you to extend the census to make sure that this thing is done right.
Yep, and that extension needs to happen. It needs to happen as soon as possible because we're already coming up against those census deadlines, and we need to make sure that the pressure is off of the Census Bureau to just get something done and that they get it done accurately.
But could now, okay, if they don't get that census extension by the time this session of Congress is over and this administration is done, could the incoming Biden administration just sort of recalibrate things, reconfigure things as, Biden comes in and he maybe, issues an executive order and says, hey, listen, you know what? This did not work well last year. We did not do this right. I want to restart it. Can't that happen if like right now the Senate is controlled by Republicans and by people who don't care about the census because they just care about making sure that they have their power grab in place, right? So, can't we, if we don't get that Extension Act passed, can't we just say, hey, like put pressure on the incoming administration to just issue some sort of administrative or executive order to fix this?
Yes, even if the Census Bureau, even if the census deadlines are not extended, the Biden administration could come in and they can say, look, this data is wrong. If there are serious errors in data, it is incumbent on them not to start using data on the American people that's inaccurate. However, they may actually end up missing those deadlines, which puts them in a bad spot. There's going to be a lot of pressure to get that data done. But I think it's most important to get the data done right. And having the deadlines extended will ensure that there isn't like this continuous pressure to just say the data is final even when it's not as accurate as it needs to be. So, both things are important, that Congress act to extend the deadlines and that the administration get the data right. Mm-hmm. Even if Congress doesn't act, hopefully we will see the new administration take action to make sure that the data.
I think that's probably going to be where we go. Now, I doubt that. I wish it was, but I doubt that we'll get that Extension Act passed. But I think this will get fixed with the new administration. We just got to make some noise around it, so to speak, and put and prioritize it, and then make sure that pandemic relief dollars and then all those federal dollars that's released as a result of the census. Those dollars are used correctly. We've been talking with Alex Tasanovich. He's Director of Campaign Finance and Electoral Reform at the Center for American Progress. Go to americanprogress.org for more information. At Ace Tasanovich on social media, on Twitter, if you'd like to engage him there or see what he's up to in terms of his research. He comes on here every great now and then, breaks down these very complex but important issues like the census for us here on Reality Check. Alex, always good to see you, man. Thanks so much.
Likewise. Great to see you.
Take care. All right. Happy holidays to you. Okay. Let's take a break. When we come back on the other side, we are scheduled to talk with, speaking of Congress, Congressman Dwight Evans is supposed to be joining us next here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open in case you have a question for him. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Supposed to be talking with Congressman Evans, and he is on. So let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
In Pennsylvania, it's now illegal to sell tobacco products, including cigarettes, cigars, chewing tobacco, vapes, or electronic cigarettes to anyone under 21. Stores can get fined up to $1,000 for selling tobacco to someone who is underage. Know the law. Check IDs. Post your retailer license. Make sure only employees have access to tobacco products, and only sell tobacco products to customers aged 21 and older. Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
With Internet Essentials from Comcast for only $9.95 a month, you get more. High-speed home internet service included. Peace of mind with XFi Advanced Security included. Access to millions of XFi Wi-Fi hotspots, that's included too. Internet Essentials from Comcast brings you affordable, high-speed internet to your home for only $9.95 a month. When you're connected, you're ready for anything. Visit InternetEssentials.com for more information. Taxes extra. Restrictions apply.
Monday through Thursday, keep it locked to WURD Radio. At 6 a.m., start your day with the Power Hour, hosted by Bishop Dwayne Royster and Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler. At 7, it's Wake Up with WURD with Solomon Jones. At 10 a.m., it's Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Then at 1 p.m., it's The Source, hosted by Andrea Lawful Sanders on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and the Black Women's Leadership Council on Wednesdays. At 4 p.m., it's Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Then at 7, it's Save Space with Sincerely Sarita. At 9 p.m., round up your day with Keeping It Real with the Reverend Al Sharpton. Keep your dial locked to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app. Or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio. Independent Black Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Okay, welcome back to Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Joining us now is Congressman Dwight Evans. And so for more information on the congressman, on your congressman, who represents the 3rd Congressional District, go to evans.house.gov at Rep Evans on social media as well. He joins us by phone, I believe. I think we got him by phone here on Reality Check. Congressman, how are you doing?
Yeah. Good morning, Charles. How are you?
All right, good. Thanks for joining us. Always appreciate this. If you have a question for the Congressman, 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900. What does a new round of pandemic relief look like? We're hearing about this compromise, $908 billion kind of bridge to more robust recovery once we get into the new Biden administration. People have problems with this. This sounds like I had a guest on just earlier, Congressman, before you, who said this really feels like another round of PPP because there's no direct payments and it's all about sending money to businesses. Why weren't the direct payments included?
Well, let me say something to you. First, I thank you, Charles, for this opportunity. A lot of my constituents are hurting and something needs to be done. And like anything in the process, I would like to have things be different than what they are, but I'm trying to help people where they are at this particular point. This particular compromise in the Senate, House and the Senate, the Speaker, the Democratic leader, and the President-elect said we need to do something now, which I totally agree. And this is a bridge because we need to do something else in addition to this. When President-elect Biden becomes president, there's another aspect that we'll need. So at this point, we need to get the immediacy because the fact of the matter is we passed the HEROES Bill 1-2. The Republican Senate is not moving it, Mitch Mcconnell.
Yeah.
People are in pain in terms of housing, other kinds of things. So my position has always been we can negotiate or we can actualize it. We want to make something done now. It's around holiday times. We no longer need to be fooled around. We need to get it done, Charles. And at this point, this moves in the right direction. There's more that needs to be done. There's always more, but at the end of the day, we got to make sure something happens.
But how do we say it's around holiday time if people aren't receiving direct payments? It's just going to go to the businesses so it's, people are wondering, like, those direct payments really help prop up the economy. I mean, there's a lot of research there that said, at least in terms of the macroeconomic fundamentals, it could have been a lot worse if you all hadn't passed that initial HEROES Act, the CARES Act, excuse me, CARES Act, right, always get them mixed up. It could have been in much worse shape, but those direct payments did help a lot, and so people aren't going to have that as they head into the holidays. So I wonder about, keep saying, like, as we head into the holidays.
We need to do both. Okay, it's not either or. One of the things that the fact of the matter is, as President-elect Biden says, we're fighting the virus, not each other. Individuals and businesses, both small businesses, black-owned businesses, they need help too. So it's not a question about pointing fingers at each other. We need to get something done. In an ideal situation, we need people to work together. So in my view, wouldn't it be great if Mitch McConnell would cooperate? The answer is yes. But the fact of the matter is to have the Senate Democrats, the House Democrats, the President-elect all in unity, it's clear to me we need to do something now. Now, we need to do both, not against direct payments. We need to have that happen. I voted for the CARES Act first time. I voted for HEROES 1, HEROES 2. Those things are sitting on the desk right now for the last 6 or 7 months. Mitch McConnell's off. They're not moving.
No, he did.
I don't have to tell you about the craziness of what's going on in the White House when he doesn't want to leave. So we try to do something for people now. We're going to do another package because, look, the chairman of the Federal Reserve said it better. We need to go big and go bold. I'm one of the ones who are big and bold. Okay, I'm not one who, want to back and forth. I want to get something done for people. There's people out there in real pain in terms of unemployment, businesses, housing, those type of things we should do. So, Charles, I say to you, we got to do everything we got to do to make it happen. And I want to get it done tomorrow.
Congressman, how do, speaking of, you're sending those, well, before I get into that question, the $908 billion, is that going to provide the type, because Mitch McConnell is not a fan of this, and I wonder what the compromise details are around making sure that some of that money goes to state and local aid to cities like Philadelphia. Do you know how much money that Philadelphia can get?
I can't tell you exactly what Philadelphia, it's $160 billion. The key thing is like cities and states, because remember, he wouldn't have anything for city states. He told them basically to drop dead. So the fact of the matter, because that has impact too. If we don't deal with city and states, that passes more burden down. The city and state is in a difficult problem. So, Charles, the point of it is, look, if I was writing a bill, it'd be different than this bill, to be honest with you. But the fact of the matter, it also needs to pass. It needs the House to pass, the Senate, and it happens to need the President's signature on it. So, I mean, I got my own preference I like, but the main preference I have is a sense of urgency. There's a lot of people out there need, people go homeless, people need things for food, those type of things we need to make happen.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. We're talking with Congressman Dwight Evans. He is at evans.house.gov if you'd like to get more information on your congressman. He represents Pennsylvania's 3rd Congressional District, parts of Philadelphia, evans.house.gov, at Rep. Dwight Evans, at Rep. Dwight Evans on social media, on Twitter more specifically. He's joining us here on Reality Check. If you have a question, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. The other question I had too, Congressman, was if we're looking at this money mostly going to businesses, to employers, to have them stay propped up and support workers. 90% of the 90% of the labor force, it's small to mid-sized businesses who are hiring like that. But how does government keep businesses from shedding workers during a recession? I feel like it's always a normal that when there's a recession, oh, sorry, we have to lay off. And I feel like, why is that written in stone somewhere that, like, oh, you have to lay off workers during a recession, and especially at a moment when the pandemic, I mean, it's no one's fault. So why are people losing jobs? I mean, how are we also going to ensure that people can return back to their old jobs? We're having that problem in Philly where businesses have shut down, restaurants, hotels, hospitality sector. workplaces. It's like I guess there's going to be a survival of the fittest once this thing is over, and then people are looking for a job. They can't get their old job back that they lost to no fault of their own. How do we prevent that? One, how do we fix that now? But how do we prevent that from happening in the next recession?
Well, first thing we do is, on the short terms, we try to make sure things like unemployment, housing, things of that nature are dealt with. Long term, we look at a major infrastructure bill. We passed one this year, which was House Resolution 2. We need a huge infrastructure, buildings, schools, things of that nature. We need to build, as Vice President Biden has said, build it back better. We have a lot to do with this economy, a much more global economy, invest in education, workforce, make sure that there's money available. Also, make sure that there's no debt for individuals when they go to college. That's another factor. So I'm sharing with you the key element is people working together. That's the key. That's a very important element. All the elements have to come together. And I believe that Vice President Biden has demonstrated that, by trying to ensure that people function together so we can get some of these things. It's not going to happen overnight. That's the thing I want to say. We didn't get into this overnight, and the solution is not going to be overnight.
Yeah. Speaking of Philadelphia and speaking of the incoming Biden administration, Philadelphia won it. Pennsylvania won it for Joe Biden, for Biden-Harris. And so people are asking this question, like, will the Biden administration look out for, and he's a home state homeboy. He basically he grew up in this area, so to speak, or in this region. And will Philadelphia be looked out for?
Yes, I can tell you that. I've talked to the Biden transition people. I assure you we've been encouraging to make sure there's not much encouraging to do. He clearly knows about Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. All members of the delegation are in tune. I can tell you something, Charles. It's a lot different than 4 years ago, okay? And I say to you, there's far more access, issues that are important. I've had discussions around housing, I've discussions around health, those kind of issues that are very important, and particularly in the African-American community of color. I've also talked to them. I've talked to them about the importance of small businesses, the importance of dealing with black businesses. So I share with you, there are things where a lot of discussions going on, and a lot of pushing. And I think clearly Vice President Biden is very clear about Philadelphia and Pennsylvania and the importance of what it means. So I assure you that I think you will see a whole different attitude in the last administration. Remember, the last administration made the statement toward African Americans, what the hell do we have to lose? And we saw what took place in the last 4 years. But I don't want to dwell on him. I want to dwell on what our future is, our opportunity. It's going to take a lot of work to build back better in terms of infrastructure, jobs, looking for what kind of jobs in the future, opportunities in the future, all of those things. So healthcare, housing, small businesses are areas that I'm concentrating on, and obviously the city and the state. But we got to do that together. We got to work with people in order to make these things happen. And I know there's a lot of frustration out there, and people feel like, how quick is this going to be done? I'm here in Washington now. I'm here all week, and we're dealing with that just this week.
Yeah, I wonder. I hope SEPTA's on that list because you have like over a quarter of the city's population doesn't drive, and I've been reading about how like there's just the mass transit agencies all over the country are hemorrhaging, including SEPTA. So what's that? We having discussions about that too, about more money going to SEPTA.
Well, part of the package of that $908 billion is money in there for transportation. I know that specifically because I was on a panel last Monday talking with the general manager of SEPTA and a deputy secretary of PennDOT. So we was meeting last Monday on the same subject, Charles and me. We met with transportation. We had a meeting with all of the hospitals in the city of Philadelphia, and we had a meeting with all the housing organizations last week. So we met with the health organizations, we met with the housing organizations, and we met with SEPTA just last week in terms of trying to build a strategy as we start a new session. It'll be the 117th session. We start on January the 3rd, but we still got a lot of work to do. We got to complete the budget for this current year. We got a relief package. And something else, Charles, we passed the major bill on about decriminalizing cannabis. A couple of my bills got in there, homegrown, making sure that in the African-American community there's dollars available for business development, and make sure that we reform the criminal justice law around cannabis, because, as you know, the war against drugs was targeted towards African-Americans and poor people. And this is the first time this bill will have passed the House, and now it goes to the Senate. It's called the MORE Act, and it's something that we think is very important. That's a job opportunity, a business opportunity. So with the MORE Act, and then in addition to that, we passed a bill that dealt with, in terms of the military, the aspect about taking traders' names off of buildings. We passed that bill in the House. Have to go to the Senate. So I'm saying there's a lot of...
I hope employers are on the same page about this as far as like marijuana decriminalization, because we're the last hired, first fired, and suddenly I'm concerned about this. I don't have anything against marijuana or people partaking in that, but a lot of young people are smoking marijuana these days, and they're going into, or they're potentially going into interviews smelling like weed. And I'm wondering, are we having this conversation with employers? Do they understand, hey, this is being decriminalized? This doesn't mean that you can't hire our young people. I mean, that's a whole nother community conversation, but I wonder about that. I wonder if we're being set up in some ways.
Well, a part of that, Charles, fits with the fact that Pennsylvania, the governor, has come out publicly. I think it needs to be legalized first. Secondly, you have criminal justice reform, for example, the aspect of making sure that individuals are not stuck in the same hole around the question of decriminalized. So these are things, Charles, that should have been changed a long time ago. When you talk about mass incarceration, and you look at what the burden between those who was using marijuana and those who are using cocaine, there was a difference in sentencing. So the fact of the matter is, this is a major step. The federal government is finally catching up with a lot of states. I mean, New Jersey, and now in Pennsylvania discussions. I mean, this should have been done a long time ago, Charles, in terms of the impact that it has had on our communities, particularly communities of color. And you talk about mass incarceration, this hits right at the heart of it. So I'm sharing with you, there's a lot of things beginning to move in place that was not there before.
Let me take Lola out of Jenkintown, Congressman, who had a quick question for you. Lola, how are you doing? Good morning.
I'm good, Charles. Thank you so much for taking my question, and thank you so much, Congressman Evans, for being on. I wanted to ask you, I'm glad that you spoke about the speaking with SEPTA and PennDOT. I wanted to ask you about, they are talking about like having major layoffs, and I know a lot of people, actually some family members who work for SEPTA, and I was wondering, do you have anything to do with like, how are they going, Harrisburg, is there going to be some type of money given to SEPTA or to try to help to stop some of these layoffs? Because, I mean, if they start laying off people in 2021, we're just going to have even more people out of jobs and losing their homes and stuff. So I was just wanting to ask the question about how is the funding going between Harrisburg and SEPTA and different stuff like that to try to curb some of all of these layoffs that are happening.
Well,
Thanks, Lola, for that question. Go ahead, Congressman.
In the CARES Act, when we passed that, there was money in there for transportation. Secondly, I agree with you. We do have to have a predictable funding. We have a source now. We have to deal with that. I was talking to the general manager and the deputy secretary of PennDOT. We have to work together, PennDOT, SEPTA, and the federal government and the state, to make sure that we have a predictable source. Transportation is very important to the economics. When Charles is talking about that, you want to talk about being able to move people to where they work and where they live. Everybody doesn't have a car. And you talk about climate control, your transportation is extremely important. So you can see, Charles, from all these issues and that question just now, we have a lot of issues hitting us. That's more the reason why we have to be working around the clock. I'm a strong advocate that we should not leave Washington until we get that relief package. Now, they won't all be what we like them to be, but the fact of the matter is the President-elect Biden knows that this is just a bridge. When you use that word, this is just a bridge. You know, we can talk about airlines, too. We can talk about all those things. Those are all interconnected to the economy, and they're connected to our hospitality industry, the ability, what effect it's having on our hotels, our convention center. So, Charles, you know, I got to say to you, is the occupant of the White House, current occupant, has left us in a mess. So we got to try to clean it up, Charles. Matter of fact, we was even talking about reparations. We got that issue there too. So there's a lot of issues that are all hitting us at once. I'm making no excuses. We just got a lot of work.
I wonder too about that. I wonder too if you all in the Congressional Black Caucus are having a conversation about that gun violence issue, because you know gun violence is we're about to hit 500 homicides in Philadelphia. Gun violence is spiking all over the place, and I don't see that happening, Congressman. I don't see the black political leadership talking at all. It's like you all are afraid to, and it's not just fatalities; it's non-fatal shootings. I don't want us to end up where we're passing something like another 94 crime bill because everyone gets to the point where they get scared and they ask for you all to do something, and then we go right back to what we did 30 years ago. Are you all having a conversation about gun violence, because it's hitting your district hard?
I can assure you it's not 94 crime bill first. Secondly, we passed a universal background check bill. We passed the Charlotte loophole. We passed those bills. In addition, I introduced one that would allow people to have the right to sue the gun manufacturers. Okay, I'm a strong advocate of that. So I share with you, is there more we need to do? The answer is yes. Congresswoman Kelly from Chicago, Robin Kelly, and I work very closely because Chicago has some of these very challenges, not just in Philadelphia. I don't disagree with you. We have to work with the state and the city on this. This has been a long time coming, these challenges that we have, and these are issues that we got to confront. So no, it's no 94 crime bill. I'll assure you that, Charles.
Yeah, and hopefully we can kind of get past this defund the police discussion, so we can do a both and on that, and you guys aren't hemorrhaging seats in 2022. You're actually gaining some, but we'll talk about that, I'm sure, at a later time.
I'm glad you said
that. Real quick. Oh, go ahead, Congressman.
That's very important. We need to gain seats. Need to get back in the majority in Harrisburg and the House and the Senate. That's very important for our ability to control the agenda.
We've been talking with Congressman Dwight Evans, 3rd Congressional District of Pennsylvania. Go to evans.house.gov for more information. At Rep. Dwight Evans, and he occasionally joins us here on Reality Check. Always good to talk with him. Congressman, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. So if we don't talk to you before the holidays.
Thank you and your show, Reality, because I enjoy talking to you and your audience, especially when I say to people, be safe this holiday. Wear those masks, wash those hands, be sensitive, call your relatives and check on them, and please follow the doctors and the science. Do not take this virus for granted, particularly in the African American community, as we lead up with the vaccine. We need to make sure people don't take it for granted, and we need to make sure everybody's talking to each other. Thank you again, and have a good day.
Yeah, thank you for that last message, Congressman. Appreciate it. You do the same. Be safe out there. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll just keep the phone lines open at 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Do you want to help kids in foster care? CASA Youth Advocates is seeking volunteers of color to advocate for the youth they serve. 50% of kids in the Delaware and Chester County foster care system are children of color, yet only 9% of CASA Youth Advocate volunteers are people of color. Children in foster care greatly benefit from advocates who look like and can relate to them. They desperately need more volunteers of color. Visit delcocasa.org for more info. That's www.delcocasa.org.
Jobs, entrepreneurship opportunities, small business resources, and financial literacy. Livelihood. The new initiative from WURD Radio to connect Philadelphians to resources to help take the next steps in their professional lives. WordWorks.com features career readiness tools, entrepreneurship resources, funding opportunities, and events to expand your livelihood. Visit WURDworks.com right now and take the next step in your professional journey.
Work, 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 work. You see me everywhere.
Livelihood is supported by the Nightland Fest's Local News Transformation Fund, Borealis Philanthropies Racial Equity and Journalism Fund, and the Solutions Journalism Network.
Did you know you can catch the flu and COVID-19 at the same time, or even back-to-back? Don't risk catching the flu during the COVID-19 pandemic. The flu shot is a safe and effective way of reducing your chances of catching the flu or spreading it to others. And the flu shot helps protect you and your community from the worst effects of the flu. Don't say, I should have got my flu shot. Call your doctor or visit your pharmacist and get your flu shot today.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. My laptop just ran out of battery power here that I have in my lap here, but that's okay. I'll just use my phone for the moment. 215-634-8065, toll free. I'll plug back in when we get to the break. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Feel free to call in. Phone lines are open. Give us your thoughts. I did see a few thoughts. I just had it up on my laptop screen. I'm not sure if I'll be able to. I think I'll try to bring it up here on my phone here. Up on Facebook Live on WURD TV. So I appreciate people listening in to our conversations on WURD TV or watching us earlier on. And people had some comments about the conversation we just had with Congressman Dwight Evans. And just stay tuned for some thoughts on that. I've actually... If you don't see it in the bnote.com, our companion magazine, you will see it elsewhere, that conversation about we really have to do a very immediate pivot, a both and pivot where, I understand people want to reform. I want to do it too. We have to reform policing, and we have to do that in very dramatic ways. But we have got to do something. We have got to have a national conversation. It can't be a scattered silo conversation. It's each city, it's each community kind of dealing with it on its own approach to the rising violence. The violence is out of control, y'all. Not just in Philadelphia. You're probably talking to your family, you're talking to your cousins, your friends in other cities, and they're all saying the same thing. Atlanta's seeing the biggest jumps in violence and homicide rates that they've seen in 30 years. Milwaukee, Detroit. Same thing in Detroit as far as biggest spikes in violence they've seen in a long time. The police chief in Los Angeles is saying, hey, you know what? We have not, no, I'm sorry, not the police chief in Los Angeles, but the executive director of the Police Executive Research Forum is saying we have not seen these spikes in violence since the 90s. Philadelphia it will reach 500 homicides and probably surpass it by the end of this year. DC, really just heartbreaking. And DC last week, I think it was last week, Wednesday, 15-month-old black boy, black toddler, shot in his car. He was in his father's car. Apparently the car was targeted, and the boy shot, and went to the hospital and died. So you're having the highest level or highest rates of children in years who've been shot in Philadelphia. Had a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old boy within a span of 2 weeks in Philadelphia alone. We are not having a concerted, collective, unified national community conversation. We having a conversation about defund the police, though. Everybody on Twitter, lighting Twitter up, talking about defund the police. Oh, you're not for defund the police? Well, you must not have been for abolish slavery. Like that is not the conversation we need to be heading into 2021 with. We need a conversation about how do we figure out a way to strengthen our quality of life pillar fundamentals. So we all have a better quality of life, and so we're not this community that is perpetually under so much economic distress and going through so much trauma. Because the spikes in violence means that we are a very distressed and traumatized community. I have not heard anyone in the Congressional Black Caucus until I just asked Congressman Evans right now. They're busy having conversations about, and I'm sick of it. I don't want to hear about black faces on Biden's cabinet. That's the kind of approach and strategy that worked back in the 70s. and 80s. They did a little bit in the 60s, after the civil rights movement. They're like, okay, we want more people at the table. Okay, you know what? We got more people in these spaces. That's not going to fix problems. First of all, not all skin folk are kinfolk, as they say, right? And two, like, I want to know if you are capable in addressing our needs. So if it's going to be someone black at the table, are they capable? Do they have a track record in directly and head on addressing our needs? Because if you're black and you don't have a track record in that, you know what? I'd rather have a white person doing it. I'll be straight up on that. If it's someone who's white and capable and also has an aggressive track record in tackling these kinds of issues, so we can restore the type of the quality of life that we need, and also and peace in our neighborhoods and communities. If that's what it takes, then that's what it takes. I don't care about, we shouldn't care about like the black faces in the room. We should care about the conditions in our black communities. That's what I care about. And I'm like, right now, like folks like in DC, like the Congressional Black Caucus, they're failing. They're not having that conversation. Everyone's afraid. And part of it too is because President Trump distorted the conversation around urban violence. So one, so people are afraid to have that conversation out of fear that they're going to sound too much like President Trump. Two, Democrats are afraid of having this conversation because these are occurring in cities that are run by Democratic Party machines. Well, then y'all need to get it together and focus on this head on. Now in Philly, we're having the conversation compared to other places. We are actually having the conversation in a loud way, but nobody has a plan. Nobody really wants to take this where it needs to go, and we shouldn't have a situation here, a conversation where people are throwing shade at or saying bad things about Black Lives Matter because they don't jump on the scene when these types of tragedies happen, where our people are getting killed due to internal community violence. And it shouldn't be a situation where Black Lives Matter activists are snapping back at people who are clearly distressed and afraid, and feeling like people are distorting that part of the conversation and not understanding the role of Black Lives. No, we should all be in the same room at the same table, planning together and doing a both-and strategy here, because you can take care of both those issues at the same time. We have to fight a two-front war. It's as simple as that, and we're not doing that. We're epically failing at that. Instead, we're talking about black faces in the room. Come on, like really, get it together. Prince out of Schuylkill calling in for a reality check. Prince.
Hey, how are you? How are you?
How you doing? All right, good.
I'm good. So two things I wanted to say. As far as the marijuana is concerned, people who own companies, the first thing, if an employee falls off a forklift, or if a cop shoots somebody, or if somebody falls off a scaffold, the first thing you have to do is go to the hospital. You have to do that. That's almost mandatory. And what we do is we check your urine and we check your blood. And so if there's any thing in your system that shows that you were impaired in doing that job, then you put a burden on the insurance carrier who insures the job. So this is why a lot of times when we talk about people showing up to jobs smelling like marijuana, there's some OSHA laws that's just in place for a certain reason. That's number one, and I'm going to let you elaborate on that. Number two, you can't have it both ways. You can't tell people to vote like their lives depend on it, because my grandma is expecting African-American people, qualified African-American people, to be in Joe Biden's house. Qualified, but you don't throw the water out with the, you don't throw the baby out with the water. You find the best qualified people who look like us that represents our best interest. You can't give me to some white person. Like, you couldn't represent my best interest if I'm available to represent my best interest, but I would like you who look like me, who know some semblance of where I come from, my level of understanding, HBCUs in and out.
But I think we're I agree with you in that sense, Prince. Well, then let's have a conversation about what exactly the agenda looks like, so we can find those qualified, capable people. But right now, it's just about, I want a black person in the room. It's like, what does that mean? Like, what kind of black person? What are their qualifications? What are they doing? Because I know a lot of black folks who are working in government, and they're not really working in our best interest. They're not really focused on that kind of a, I'm happy that there's going to be a black woman in the White House who's going to be the top economist in the country, Cecilia Rouse. She's at Princeton. But is she going to talk about economics or lead on economics from the perspective of like things that you talk about, Prince, all the time about like what's happening in low-income and vulnerable, distressed Black communities in places like Philly with high poverty rates? And I just like I don't need to know that she's Black and she has an Ivy League degree. I want to know, are you Black and you really feel these issues and can you really advocate on them?
Well, I mean, and I'm going to make these 2 points, and I'm going to hang up because I know you got other callers. And you make a valid point. I'm going to give you your 2 examples of your point. You got Height here, school district superintendent, and you got the police commissioner. 2 African Americans that African Americans wanted in those 2 positions, and it's been a dismal state since they've been in there. So I'm agreeing with you. And some of your fellow callers would probably say you get more out of other people being at the table than people who look like us. But I'm not willing to give up on finding people who look like us now. Well, does her
I'm not either. I hear you. Mm-hmm.
Okay, then does her culture allow her to be intimately tied into our economic struggle? No, because sometimes we're going to have to figure out how we can get – you just had a congressman on there. He talked about everything but how stimulus and how we get out of this situation here should have been primary, because Christmas is coming up in the next couple of weeks, and a lot of people are going to feel this crunch right here, man. So I'm going to hang up, listen to you, and thank you for taking my call.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you, Prince, and I hope people are focused on. I hear people talking about this, saying this a lot, and I empathize too. Especially during the holidays, and people want to be able to have that reprieve during the holidays. But also let's focus on the priorities during the holidays. Okay, if folks are in a position where I understand we're all in a pandemic. That's something that we did not create. That is not our fault. And if you're in a pandemic, you can't get the gifts that you can get, or you can't have the kind of Christmas that you normally would have each year. That's okay. That's okay. Let's focus on the priorities and focus how we can come together as let's get back to the true fundamentals of what because Christmas is built around. It's supposed to be, and apparently it's been distorted not to now. It's built around the political ideology of Jesus Christ, the radical political ideology of Jesus Christ, who was all about looking out for the least of us. That was what Jesus was about. Okay, like that's what the history books are complete on that. Let's take advantage of this moment to focus on that instead of stressing ourselves out over gifts or lack thereof, and let's not shame people or stigmatize people because they aren't in a position to do that. Let's see how we can help each other out. And the way we help each other out, one of the ways we start helping each other out is having the right conversations, the right strategic conversations, and coming up with a plan and then implementing that plan. How do we keep Philly from not going into 500 or 600 or 700 homicides next year? How do we get people employed in Philly? How do we figure out a way? To get all adults in Philadelphia literate and on and reading past an 8th grade reading level or past even a 6th grade reading level so they can get employed, so they can take advantage of that green jobs, clean jobs economy that Catherine Gilmore Richardson, the councilwoman, just talked about that they're trying to create in Philly, right? So it's like let's take advantage of this moment, these holidays, to really push this conversation in the right direction. But at this stage, I'm not feeling very encouraged by like the tenor of the conversation. Watching people on social media and on radio shows and TV shows and whatnot, everybody's talking about defund the police. I'm like, that's like the smallest issue compared to like these other big issues we got going on right now. We need to fix. We need to put a course correction on so then you can get to that point where you can correct policing or reform policing in a really dramatic way in Philly and beyond. Let me go ahead and take a break, and we'll be right back with, I think John Podesta is going to be joining us next here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Just one more step. You got it.
You're doing great. This is the sound of a nationally ranked top rehabilitation hospital, home to the largest collection of robotics in the United States, where we continually exceed patient expectations, because no injury is too severe or too minor for our care.
There you go.
This is the sound of success. Moss Rehab. Challenge accepted.
Buying something from a dealer just sounds a bit, well, put it like this. My cousin Ray Ray got arrested for buying something from a dealer. So why would you want to buy your car from a dealer? Hi, everybody. This is Nick inviting you to buy your next car from Jerry over at Cardex. See, they're not dealers. They're like a car concierge service. They design a car around you. Almost any make. If it's not on the lot, they'll go out and get it for you. So use my car concierge, where I've already bought 4 cars. Cardex at 116 East Glenside Avenue in Glenside, Pennsylvania. Check them out online at cardexinc.com. Or call Cardex at 215-886-3230.
This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Independent Black Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back. We're back here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. If you're listening beyond the greater Philly area and the Delaware Valley area, I'm at Ellison Report on Twitter.com. Also, you can catch us, hashtag Reality Check, for more there. Joining us now is John Podesta. He's worked in a number of administrations. I'm sure he's closely tied to what's happening with, or he's keeping an ear on what's happening with the Biden transition with the president-elect's team. Was working for the Clinton administration, also one of the founders of the Center for American Progress as well. John Podesta joining us by Skype here on Reality Check. Mr. Podesta, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well, thanks, Charles.
All right, excellent, excellent. You've been focusing quite a bit on clean energy, or pursuing a better, more equitable climate crisis and clean energy agenda for this new incoming Biden administration. I'm real curious, get your thoughts on how significant the focus was on climate in 2020. There's just so many things we were focused on in 2020. It was a big moment of the pandemic, social justice, all that. But I mean, were we able to have a more vocal discussion about, or a stronger discussion about, climate crisis and environmental injustice, you think?
Yeah, I think Biden and Harris, the president-elect and vice president-elect, were able to focus and bring together the COVID crisis, the economic crisis, the racial justice crisis, and the climate crisis. Mm-hmm. And the recovery proposal that they put out during the summer and then campaigned on in the fall, really at its heart was a lot of investment in transforming the energy system to provide cleaner, healthier air, cleaner water, and with a real focus on environmental justice. 40% of the investments that they proposed were going to distressed communities. Those are the communities that have the legacy of pollution because they had industrial plants sited there near them. Fossil fuel plants. There's mercury poisoning. All those things that are attendant to health disparities that are cleaved along the line of racial disparities. They tried to pull together, and so they ran on climate. They advertised on climate, and I think they won on climate because they stimulated a lot of young people to vote in this election. More than 10% increase in the vote amongst young people. I mean, obviously, people came out across the board, talking about his voters out too, but I think it was a significant victory for the climate, and they go in with a mandate to do something.
Yeah, I mean, it was real remarkable too, watching that contrast between the two candidates on those climate issues or climate-oriented issues like fracking, for example, in Pennsylvania. So was there a real threat there where we felt like the eco vote, which was driving many voters to the polls, being offset by Trump trying to frame this as a anti-jobs discussion? Like, hey, if you're for trying to address climate crisis, then you must not be for jobs or growing jobs. Was there a fear there, or did you see signs where concerns over climate crisis were offset by voter concerns over jobs being lost, which is not even correct? It's not even accurate. You actually grow jobs when you create a clean energy economy. But there was those concerns in states like Pennsylvania, which made it tight.
Yeah. Well, Trump, tried to make that claim, but he lost Pennsylvania. And I think that, there may have been some people who listened to him, but in the 7 out of the 8 counties where fracking exists in Pennsylvania, Biden actually did better than Hillary did in 2016. So I think he made the argument, and Senator Harris made the argument that the real job future lies in energy transformation, in clean energy jobs. Mm-hmm. And whether that's in the power sector by going to more renewables, or whether it's in transportation by investments in supply chains in America to create more electric mobility, millions of jobs will be created by addressing the climate crisis. And I think that, like I said, I think particularly in the suburbs, Biden had the winning side of that argument across the state. He obviously won. But I think that if you look at the polling, I mean, this is essentially a 60-40 issue all over the country, including in Pennsylvania, and Trump was on the 40% side. So, I mean, it was an interesting political strategy, but, you know, it didn't succeed. And I think Biden stuck with it. And as he explained, he wasn't against banning fracking on private property. He's called for ending leases on public lands to do more fracking. But we've got to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels and move towards cleaner energy and a cleaner economy. And I think that's good for public health. It'll be good for reducing health disparities, and it'll be good for jobs.
Yeah, how do we assure, you know, folks who are really concerned about climate crisis, the impact of habits, fossil fuel habits like fracking, the methane emissions from that, that exacerbates that climate crisis issue, the warming of the planet? How do you assure people that this is the strategy, the way to go to use natural gas as a bridge to that clean energy economy? Some people would say, many activists would say that, you know what, we just need to just go about dismantling as soon as possible the natural gas economy and just start immediately implementing a clean energy economy or a clean energy infrastructure. And so how do we alleviate people's concerns over that? Yeah. Like, you know, because how do you know, when you have so much methane going into the air, accelerating a lot of these climate disasters that we're seeing?
Yeah, particularly with fracking, you also have the attendant, you know, you're using frack chemicals, which you get into the water. There are all kinds of problems, but methane is a principal one. You know, look, I think that even I was saying 15 years ago that natural gas was a bridge fuel. It was replacing coal. Coal power fire when President Obama came into office was 50% of what we were doing to generate power in this country. Now it's down to 20%. Gas is cleaner than coal. But guess what? We've kind of crossed over that bridge. And now our investments need to be in renewables and expanding the portfolio, more research and storage, so the combination of renewables and storage can power a clean economy. There's a potential for tremendous use of offshore wind that the Trump administration has been sitting on the permits on. Which is, again, clean, renewable, abundant resource in the Northeast. And, you know, we have to, you know, gas is going to have a future for a while. I mean, it's obviously part of the baseload picture of electricity production in the United States right now, and it will be. But what Biden has promised is that by 2035, we'll have 100% clean power sector. So that means, you know, going gangbusters really on renewables. And if gas is going to have a future, I think a lot of people are skeptical about this, myself included, but it's going to have to be only with carbon capture and sequestration. Right. You know, I think that's going to be a high cost option. I think renewables are cheaper. Renewables plus storage are more are resilient, reliable. So, you know, we're going to be with it for a while. Hopefully, we'll retire more of the coal because it's the most polluting fossil fuel. But eventually, by middle of the next decade, we're going to have to be on to 100% clean energy.
Do you think the incoming administration will have an opportunity here through impending coronavirus relief, depending on how muscular or robust that is. I mean, we got the $908 billion compromise, which is more of a bridge, right? Just kind of get us through this period, make sure the government doesn't shut down within the next several days, and then a bridge to once the new administration sets in or settles in the White House, okay, let's do a $1 trillion to $3 trillion plus recovery program. Is that going to be that big kind of spark moment for an ambitious green, clean energy economy? You think that that's that moment, that opportunity moment to have to trigger that? Because that timeline is fairly aggressive compared to what we've been hearing over the years. 2035, that's 15 years to get to 100% clean energy. So that means we're going to have to start moving now. Do you think that that's that opportunity moment next year with pandemic relief?
Yeah, well, I think that was the plan. That's what Biden proposed during the course of the campaign. I could answer that question more easily after January 5th when we see the outcome of those 2 Georgia runoff elections.
Right.
If the Democrats have control of the Senate, even in a 50-50 Senate where you'll have to negotiate a lot with the more conservative senators like Joe Manchin in West Virginia, Kristen Sinema in Arizona, they still will be able to set the agenda. And I think one piece of that agenda will be a recovery that's really built around these investments in green infrastructure, clean energy, et cetera. If the Republicans still control the Senate, I think there's still opportunity to get for example, green infrastructure bill through. But I think it'll take longer and it'll be a tougher slog than if Mitch McConnell's the Senate leader as opposed to Chuck Schumer being the Senate leader. So we'll just have to wait and see. I'm hopeful that we can actually win those Georgia Senate races, particularly given the fact that the Republicans are at war down there with each other, and the Trump forces with the governor and secretary of state who basically are being attacked for actually just doing their job.
Yeah. We're talking with you just now tuning in. We're talking with John Podesta, actually former chief of staff to the Clinton White House back in the 90s. Also was an advisor, counselor to President Obama during that administration, and I believe 2016 Hillary Clinton campaign chair at one point. Joining us here on Reality Check, we're talking about next steps what the Biden administration might do, should do, could do as far as issues around the environment like climate crisis, clean energy, et cetera. We had, I was just having a conversation earlier with a council member here in Philadelphia, John, Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson. So Philadelphia City Council just passed this past Thursday what they call a green recovery resolution. And that's basically focusing all the cities, like, budget guidance would be based on, hey, we've talked about climate crisis, environmental justice. We're going to bake this into the DNA of governance in Philadelphia. Is that where, like, cities and states, you think that, one, that's where cities and states, they need to head in that direction where they're totally, they're building or they're operating around environmental priorities, climate priorities? And two, are you seeing that happening where, like, if Congress and folks in D.C. can't get on the same page about this, well, you know what, the cities and states are filling that void?
Yeah, one of the ironies, I think, of Trump pulling out of Paris, which Biden will trigger the process to get back in on the first days in office, but Trump has pulled out of the Paris Accord, is he sort of galvanized a group of 26 states and Puerto Rico and cities all across the country to say we're still in. We're still going to try to meet the commitment that President Obama promised on behalf of the United States. And so you see in cities in red states and blue states, you see governors, both Republicans and Democrats, joining that effort because I think they know that's where the future is. And it has all these ancillary benefits that we've sort of been talking about. It not only produces jobs in the short run, but it produces a healthier city, cleaner environment. It's a more attractive place to want to live. It's where businesses want to go. It's where talent wants to come. So I think there's been a real acceleration of that. And you see, I mentioned offshore wind. I mean, these governors, particularly in the Northeast, Cuomo, Phil Murphy, Northam in Virginia, they're like fighting for this stuff, because there's ports, there's manufacturing, there's the installation that's associated with unions are behind it. They're good paying jobs, they're organized jobs. So I think where you again, and in the Northeast where you have more moderate Republicans, you don't have this crazy Trump climate denial, so Charlie Baker in Massachusetts or Larry Hogan in Maryland, they're like down with the program. So I think that we're going to see a lot of activity, and I think it's actually a good building block for Biden, because he's promised an all-government approach, like everybody in the pool, trying to ensure that every part of the federal government is working with states and cities to make that transition happen, and really to put people back to work with family-sustaining jobs.
Yeah. There's been a lot with this current administration rolling back or dismantling the Environmental Protection Agency, which ironically was created by a Republican president.
Yeah.
And so the EPA right now is you can make the argument. I mean, it's just virtually non-existent. I mean, it's just an agency in a building at this point. So how will the new administration restore the EPA? Like put those because we're going to, as we go down this path of like resilience and also this path towards like totally reconfiguring, restructuring the economy, we're also going to need those environmental protections at the same time. Can the EPA be restored?
Yeah, look, I wish they had done nothing. They were active in rolling back 125 key clean air, clean water protections. And they decimated the agency. They decimated the scientific staff at the agency. There's a similar pattern at CDC. It's very harmonic, I guess maybe is the right word, with COVID. They don't listen to scientists. They don't listen. They denigrate them. They don't listen to the experts. They've kind of relied on conspiracy and junk science. So there's a lot of rebuilding to be done. But I think there's a lot of excitement, when I talk to, particularly young scientists in university settings, they want to get to work on this problem. And so I think they'll have to get in there. They'll have to recruit good talent. They'll have to, day one, begin to reverse the reversals and put back in place key protections across EPA, the Interior Department, other agencies. And certainly they'll have to do it while really executing on the COVID crisis. That's got to be job number one, which is to get on top of the pandemic, get the vaccine distributed effectively, done equitably, so that, everybody has access to it. And, but I think that's a doable task. I think the federal service, the people who are career employees of these agencies are a little bit shell-shocked. But I think once they have leadership that says, you have a mission to protect the public, that's why EPA was created. Right. That is an honor to be able to do the work on behalf of the American people. I think they'll respond to that.
The face of climate and clean energy policy, I wonder about the impact of frontline communities, the Black and Brown indigenous populations. Black communities, like 40% of the U.S. Black population is in those climate high impact zones, like those hurricane alleys and hurricane avenues. And so I wonder about that, how much focus there'll be on this as we kind of head into, the new Biden administration and a clean energy economy, making sure that those jobs, like I feel like sometimes when we have these conversations, most times when we have these conversations, it's a very white middle class conversation. And I really want to see a change in that with this new administration. Can we hope for that? Can we see that happening?
Yeah, I think we need to hold the president-elect and the vice president-elect to the promises they made. They said they identified this as a problem. They recognized that these communities have been devastated by pollution over, decades, centuries maybe, that just like in COVID, the disparities on people's lives and livelihoods, their health, is a just demonstrated over and over again. And part of that is because of the legacy of pollution in those communities. And I think that for those of us on the outside, we need to hold them to account to that. But I don't think it's going to be a hard task, because I think that one of the things that particularly during the course of the campaign, as Biden got more and more engaged in this, I think he spent a lot of time on Zoom, not in person, but on Zoom, talking to environmental justice elders, environmental justice leaders about the fights they've been, undertaking for, like I said, decades. And I think he really resonated to that and understood that one of his missions has to be, in addressing the racial justice crisis, he has to do a better job on these healthcare disparities and on the legacy of environmental pollution. So I think he's very serious about it. He said 40% of the investments are going to go to frontline and distressed communities, and I think the first thing they need to do is make sure that they have accurate accounting of how that money is flowing. But I think he's going to put people in who strongly believe in that. When I worked for President Obama, I coordinated all the climate work of the administration. My successor, Brian Deese, just was announced to be the head of the National Economic Council. And he's a climate champion. I think he'll attend to it. They're going to create a climate office that will execute the strategy. And one thing we haven't talked about was, I think his appointment of Secretary Kerry to be the nation's climate envoy internationally is a strong signal that Biden not only sees this as central to the economic rejuvenation of the country, but it's central to the fact that that it's going to be central to the foreign policy and security policy of the United States. And that's why Kerry's nomination has been so well received. And by the way, I think he's got a great partner in Vice President-elect Harris. She, as she was both when she ran for president, but then when she returned to the Senate, she put in the most ambitious environmental justice bill that the Senate has seen. And I think, it would be a priority for her and her team working with the president and his team.
I think to your point about, the geopolitics, I think are real important. That's probably where you can find some common ground with Republicans, you think, right, John? Where one on foreign policy and defense policy, because the Pentagon, the folks in the Defense Department and the branches, they've made this a priority. Climate is like is one of those like top strategy areas. So one, kind of finding some common ground there, and then two, maybe on issues like conservation. Hey, okay, don't have you on climate crisis yet, but hey, if you want to keep hunting, for example, and fishing in these great expanded green areas that you all celebrate and live in some cases, well, this is what you have to do to preserve it. So it's like, I got you for another minute. What's that conversation like to draw more like Republican voters and more Republicans in to make sure everyone's on the same page about this?
Yeah, there's definitely an age split amongst Republican voters. Younger Republican voters recognize that the future is going to be at risk from a security perspective too. When we're seeing these big fires in Southern California, we're also witnessing big migration flows out of Guatemala because they just got clobbered with two back-to-back strong hurricanes. So there's lots of moving parts here, but I think that the Biden team will have the ability, I think, to engage Republicans, particularly in these security areas. And Kerry is obviously well known to them, served in the Senate for a long time, and I think they will trust him that that we've got to step up to the plate in order to avoid the worst effects, which will have cascading security effects on the United States. So, he's got a lot of credibility around the world, and I think, it's just it was a very smart move to appoint him and make him a National Security Council principal, and try to help guide that effort. And I think that your point about that is an avenue into the Republicans. I think the other place where there will have to find some common ground is a consolidated, coordinated strategy vis-a-vis China, which I think they'll be open to, and are coordinating. And again, this I think will be principally Kerry's job with the European Union and having a common approach across a whole range of problems we have with China, but also to try to encourage China to get on with the program, to increase their ambition, particularly in this next decade.
Yeah, I'm talking with John Podesta, who is a founding board member of the Center for American Progress, also former chief of staff to President Bill Clinton, also counselor to President Obama, Hillary Clinton 2016 campaign chairman, and he's been joining us here on Reality Check. Mr. Podesta, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
That's great. Thanks,
we'll talk to you again. Take care.
Okay.
All right.
Hope so.
Be safe. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back on the other side, we're supposed to be talking with Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint of Healthcare Ready. We're going to talk about where we are in this pandemic. We have just weekly health conversations around how to tackle pandemic or what's being done as far as the overall national strategy, and just to help you guide yourself through it. But let's take a break. I think we have Nicolette. She may be on hold or holding for us. Phone lines are open in case you have a question for 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
This year's been tough, but it's given me a lot of time to learn new skills through the internet.
I've been joining more classes during lockdown.
I'm doing an internship.
I taught myself how to play guitar.
So when people ask,
will I be able to learn online?
I feel like I'm ready.
Internet Essentials from Comcast has connected millions of families from low-income homes to the internet. So no matter what back to school looks like, students can be ready for anything. Learn more at comcast.com/Internet Essentials.
Always Best Care is a great place to work. Flexibility,
leadership, purpose,
great benefits.
There's never a dull moment.
Diversity, inclusion, compasión.
We love our jobs. If you're looking for a great place to work, you can join our compassionate Team Green. You can apply online at teamgreenabc.com or call 267-909-9248.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
WURD Radio presents the following wellness tip to support our listeners with mindfulness and motivation as we continue to navigate the pandemic together.
Hi, this is Halana, your resident health and wellness coach, with tips to help you stay well. We breathe every day and have been doing so since before we were born. But wait, let's think about this for a moment. Something as simple as breathing can enhance our health and well-being. When we breathe mindfully, we slow down, take deep breaths, and activate our parasympathetic system to relax our bodies. Mindful breathing goes like this. Number 1, find a comfortable place to sit still for a few minutes. Number 2, close your eyes and relax your hands on your thighs. Number 3, take a deep breath in and count to 3. Then exhale your breath and count to 3. Do this 5 times. We sometimes think mindful breathing has to be an intense experience, yet even just a few minutes a day can make a big difference. Go ahead and try it today. Stay well with WURD. Happy living.
Stay well with WURD. Connect with us at wordradio.com. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM in Philly proper, wordradio.com, throughout the nation, throughout the world, and WURD TV, many of you watching through there as well. We are youtube.com/onWURD, facebook.com/4WURD as well. And you can catch me at Ellison Report on Twitter.com. Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint is Executive Director of Healthcare Ready. Go to healthcareready.org. You know, she joins us occasionally here, been guiding us through the pandemic, giving us some real key critical information. She's joining us by Skype here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open in case you have a question or want to offer some insight, share some perspectives with us on this pandemic as you're going through it. We're all going through it. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900. Nicolette, good afternoon. Good to see you. All right, good to see you. The president-elect's COVID advisory team, when you look at that, when I look at it at least, I really don't see that robust, like, local and state current and or former public health official expertise, right? I'm not seeing like states or cities, departments of health or commissioners on there. And I really want to see that kind of representation. I think there's one former Chicago public health commissioner, and that's about it. Shouldn't local and state public health officials be on the lead of something like this?
So let's take the first part of that. I actually think that there are a couple that have former public health experience. One of the things that happens when you get people that frankly are that qualified or have been working in this field for a long time, it gets buried in their bios. But I distinctly remember the leader of the de Beaumont Foundation raised this commentary, and in response to the commentary, there were two professionals that did point out that they did have public health experience. I do think it's important to have leaders that have public health experience. I also think it should be balanced with healthcare experience, if we're being honest, because those are two systems that work radically differently, and having an understanding of what states and locals are actually going through day to day is critical. But it's really hard to ask, I think, state
That's interesting, real quick. And I didn't mean to cut you off there, because I found that very interesting, that distinction, public health expertise versus healthcare expertise. Because people would think that that's the same thing, right? So what's the distinction? Yeah, just real quick. I'm real curious about that. About
public health, we are thinking about largely government managed and large-scale community health. So we're not thinking about the delivery of care to an individual. We're thinking about the sustainment of care to a community. So, you know, and the authorities follow that. So if you're thinking about what a public health agency is going to do, you're not going to go there to figure out how to get a refill of your prescription. You're not going to go there to figure out if you can get your surgery, but you are going to go there to find out what's being done around HIV prevention messaging or opioid crisis, you know, strategies. On the flip side of that, healthcare is about the delivery of care specifically to an individual. So I always look at it as public health is guiding the strategy that determines how we sustain care for the collective. But healthcare is the system that's actually doing the work of implementing that strategy for the individual. But they're two very different systems. They have two very different sets of authority, and they connect, but they are not the same.
Thank you for that distinction. Yeah, that's correct. So, you know, and moving forward, I think that's very important, and listeners need to know that. Moving forward, like how do we accomplish or achieve that synergy between like the public health perspective, the healthcare perspective, them kind of working in tandem and leading on this COVID response?
Sure. You know, just in COVID, for example, it looks like having an understanding of what it looks like to produce, move, maintain the integrity of, deliver medicines and vaccines.
Right.
And what that looks like from the public health perspective of creating the strategy to determine who is getting the vaccine, in what facility types, in what order, how communication about these different products are being managed, and what questions are being allayed in partnership with community to make sure that people are understanding what products are available, what treatments may be made available to them.
Yeah. We're talking with Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint. She is at Dr. N. Lewis-Saint on Twitter, on social media. If you'd like to see what she's up to there, engage her there. See what Healthcare Ready is up to. Healthcareready.org. Healthcareready.org. She joins us quite frequently. We partner up with them to bring you and also distribute this real critical information here. She's joining us here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. The president-elect was saying that he does not yet see a current vaccine distribution plan from the current Trump administration. So we're also hearing reports of like there being like challenges as far as the vaccine supply chain, also storing them, et cetera, that we really didn't have a plan for this vaccine rollout. What's the timeline look like for this thing? Because it seemed ambitious about a week ago. Now people are kind of pulling back a bit. I think the president-elect is like, you know what, let me just wait and see until I get in the White House on January 20th, and then we'll figure this out. But describe the supply chain situation here, or this vaccine distribution problem.
So I think we first have to describe what a normal supply chain looks like. You know, you and I have been kind of joking about this, that nobody cared about the supply chain until earlier this year, and then everybody became a supply chain expert. But for vaccines in particular, you're going to have raw materials, and then you're going, so on the manufacturing side, you have raw materials that go into the production of the vaccine. And then you have the actual production of the vaccine. That vaccine has to be finished. It's being loaded into a pre-filled syringe, loaded into a vial, and that is going to be maintained through what's then called distribution. That product then has to be able to move, and in the case of many of the vaccines, move in what's called cold chain. There are two forms of cold chain. There is cold and ultra cold. Which basically is minus 80 degrees is the ultra cold. For context, for someone who's never been in a lab, liquid nitrogen, that's minus 80.
Wow.
Your freezer at your home, that's about minus 20. That's cold storage.
Wow.
So those are the temperatures you're talking about for cold storage or ultra cold. It has to be distributed, and then that distribution has a couple of steps, but basically there's a central part, there's a middle part, and then there's what's called the last mile. The middle part, in this case, the way that the strategy is rolling out, involves the states. So that's where the state public health agencies are coming in to determine which facilities are getting what. The last mile is that product in a packet of some sort with supplies for the actual administration of the vaccine being delivered to those facilities to be able to be administered. And to the point that you were referencing, the distribution strategy has to make sure that it is including strategies for cold and ultra cold, because depending on the vaccine type that we're discussing and whichever one or ones get EUAs, there is one that is ultra cold, there's another that is cold.
You know, the other thing too on vaccine, well, I got you for a few more minutes here, Nicolette. We were starting to have this conversation. We've been having it in fits and starts, I feel like, but at some point I know I'm going to have a much more kind of organized, structured conversation, inviting you and others. I'm thinking about like a whole like 3-hour-long vaccine panel because it's become a real serious conversation. The trust gap, right? I'm sure you saw that COVID collaborative survey. Just 14% of Black people, just 34% of Latinos saying that they trust the vaccine. And the Black demographic is the most likely to say that they won't take it, that they don't trust it. So how do we have that effective vaccine conversation now? Because we're getting to the point where this is starting to circulate, and you got a bunch of people, particularly the hardest hit demographic, saying they don't want to take it, they don't want to have anything to do with it. That becomes a problem, and I worry too about people it getting to the point, the last resort, where it's like, oh, you know, you don't want to take it, okay, we're going to have to force you to take it. And so I'm trying to kind of hedge against that. But how do we restore public confidence? How do we have an effective how do we restore Black confidence, have an effective vaccine conversation?
Sure. So I think there are a couple of things. One is, and part of the reason I love this forum is because we can have very honest conversations about what's happening all the way from policy to practice. I have been, frankly, very disappointed with some of my colleagues who are academics, researchers, experts in tangential spaces, doing work of raising alarm about vaccine candidates without doing the due diligence of finding out information before they raise alarm. And the reason I say that is because we have to be, you know, we often say, you know, be as loud with your apology as you were with your disrespect. We have to be as loud with the information that we have as we are with the concerns. And we're not doing that right now.
Yeah.
So what's happening is there are a lot of questions and concerns that are being raised, and some of them, or most of them, I would say, are being addressed, but they're not being addressed with the same volume. And some of our trusted agents have to do more to frankly assist us in making sure that we're both calling out these things, but also when we get the good information, amplifying it. The other thing is, I think we have to be really careful about our language. So one of the things that concerns me is when we talk about, will you take the vaccine? We don't frame it around when the vaccine is approved and available.
Right.
And if we're not conscious about that, we're creating a language that is almost implying that we're not talking about approved processes. We're not talking about things that have gone through a routine process. And let's be honest, who would want to take anything that didn't go through the appropriate checks or, reviews or approvals? So I think that's a part of it, is we have to be very intentional. I try my best to use the language of vaccine candidates when we're talking about the things that are currently in review. But the other piece of it is not just talking about, and there's a place for talking about what the final products will be, but we should also talk about the process. Pfizer and Moderna in particular have on the record really historic numbers as it relates to diversity in those clinical trials. That's important. So that's something that we've been pushing for years for a range of different products. But to understand that it's not that it's going to be in Black people for the first time, at the point of administration. That's something that's important from my vantage point as well.
Let me take a real quick call from Cordell out of Southwest, who was calling. He had a quick question for you, Nicolette. Cordell, you still there?
Yes, I am. Peace and blessings to both of you. Have several questions. One, cure versus the vaccine. Why don't they go after a cure? Another, can an allergy test be administered prior to a vaccine to avoid some of the problems?
Yeah, Nicolette, did you hear that?
So I think I heard the first one of a cure, not just a vaccine.
Right.
And the second one was an allergy test to avoid some of the irritants.
Right, from the vaccine. Exactly.
From the vaccine.
Yeah.
So
Thank
the
you,
allergy. Thank you so much for those questions. The allergy test should be available, but I think one of the things that is important about the technology used for these vaccines is that it's not new. So I often think about my mother. My mother has a chicken allergy, and it's very severe. And because of that chicken allergy, she actually cannot take most flu vaccines because they're made in eggs. So she has to take a cell-based vaccine. So again, whatever is true for her allergies for the flu vaccine would be true for her allergies here. My point is saying, if you have existing data understanding what your allergies or sensitivities are, that would apply. There's going to be a very, very small percentage of the population, though, that's going to have an allergy to the vaccine. I think it is true, though, that because this is eliciting an immune response, you could have an immune response to the vaccine. Similar to the very first time you get the flu vaccine, everyone remembers you get a fever, you might, have a reaction and think, oh, am I getting the flu? No, your immune response is happening. On the cure side, I'm really glad you asked that question, because I do think we are not talking about the therapies as much as we're talking about the vaccine, and I think it's a mistake. There are a number of therapies that have received or will soon receive an emergency use authorization that have gone through trials, have been tested, some of them even used in, national leaders that have been infected with COVID. And so there are therapies. Now, are they perfect? We're still refining what we know about them. They're still being examined, but we are, from a treatment perspective, in a much better place right now than we were in March. That is not to say that you should not have your precautions in place, because they're not perfect cures. Nothing will be, but that is something that is underway and is continuing to be developed, are a range of therapies. I believe right now we have 3, possibly 4, the 4th soon coming, approved therapies for COVID.
Wow, that's good to know. Thank you for that question. Both those questions, Cordell, smart questions as well. I'm going to have to wrap. I'm going to let you go. Nicolette Lewis-Saint is Executive Director of Healthcare Ready, healthcareready.org. She's always on the go, always busy. I can hear things already pinging and blinging and bells ringing in the background. So we always appreciate her time as well. Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint, at Dr. N. Lewis-Saint on Twitter, on social media, if you'd like to reach her there, or at least see how she's engaged. Thanks so much, Nicolette, as always.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.
You do the same. Take care. Thanks for the information. All right, let's take a break, and when we come back, phone lines are open still at 215-634-8065. Had a busy Reality Check Monday, 215-634-8065, and toll free it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
Dietz & Watson has been making premium meats and artisan cheeses for over 80 years. And when it comes to stacking sandwiches and party platters, they've got something for everyone in the family, like maple honey turkey breast, American cheese, buffalo chicken, and more. So get to your local deli and taste 4 generations of family recipes. With Dietz & Watson on the table, you'll have everyone coming back for seconds and thirds. Dietz & Watson, it's a family thing since 1939.
Monday through Thursday, keep it locked to WURD Radio. At 6 a.m., start your day with the Power Hour, hosted by Bishop Dwayne Royster and Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler. At 7, it's Wake Up with WURD with Solomon Jones. At 10 a.m., it's Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Then at 1 p.m., it's The Source, hosted by Andrea Lawful Sanders on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and the Black Women's Leadership Council on Wednesdays. At 4 p.m., it's Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Then at 7, it's Save Space with Sincerely Sarita. At 9 p.m., round up your day with Keeping It Real with the Reverend Al Sharpton. Keep your dial locked to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app. Or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio. Independent Black Media. Want to buy black for the holidays?
WURD Radio has got you covered. WURD is proud to present our virtual holiday marketplace online. Support local, small, black-owned businesses through the marketplace and purchase your holiday gifts today. Visit WURDradio.com/marketplace or WURDworks.com/marketplace.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Check out our companion magazine for this program, The B Note, THEBE Note.com, thebnote.com. And you can check out the latest piece from contributing editor, also a contributor here at Reality Check WURD, Dr. G.S. Potter. Great, very insightful piece, and something to think about too. The title might strike you as very controversial, but it definitely gets its point across the entire read. Maybe Karen, in quotes, maybe Karen is the reason we can't read. White women, systematically speaking, control and administrate all of the key social service and infrastructural industries that Black, Brown, and Indigenous people rely on. So just making a point about the role of white women in industries such as education, such as our schools, and the overrepresentation of white female teachers in our public school and other school classrooms, and how that's actually become a problem over the years. So check it out. Maybe Karen is the reason we can't read at the latest B Note, THEBE Note.com. Go there to subscribe. Also, we're going to be coming up with starting this week with our exclusive proximity conversations, extensions of these conversations here on Reality Check at thebenote.com, THEBE Note.com. You can get in the room with those influencers and policymakers, thought leaders who are having those conversations, but you just have to subscribe. You have to become a subscriber, an actual paid subscriber to the B Note. It's a very small fee in order to engage in those conversations and to be in the room, as they say, when they take place. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Kenrick Talbot here, I appreciate him listening. He was listening by the TuneIn app. He said he resents, I'll just read this. He resents what he describes as my condescending, and he describes it as my condescending and dismissive tone regarding defund the police now. This is a top priority to me. This is what Kenrick is saying. I'm quoting him, who lives in West Philly. A major reason for the increased violence is the mistrust and disrespect of police, which is the fault of government, not us. Why does the FOP have so much power nationwide? Why should our taxes continue to fund our destruction don't flip off of our serious concerns, Charles. You don't like the terminology, come up with something better, but don't dismiss it as if I don't know what I'm talking about. Yes, I made it personal because it is. So I appreciate, Kenrick, you tuning in. First of all, where did I say that I didn't agree with all you just laid out there? I actually said that I do agree. I agree with the overall core mission. You're absolutely right. Like the FOP is controlling police departments. All police unions are controlling police departments. Let's put a stop to that. You know, yeah, our taxes, we're taxpaying residents. We shouldn't be funding our own destruction or the war of police killing unarmed civilians. You know, I understand that that's a factor. Increased violence comes from mistrust and disrespect of the police. And I understand also, and I've been talking about this daily, I don't know if you've been listening into that, about how I think it's wrong that the police union is holding back police services because it's in its feelings right now about people now putting it under such increased scrutiny for police misconduct. So I don't know where you got the impression that I disagree with all that. I don't. I just said, let's go back to the table for a few more minutes. I've even thrown out terms over months saying, hey, you know what, that defund the police thing, you know, it's like David Seaton said earlier. He was saying the same thing. And even Danielle Moody was kind of on the same page about this. And she's as like progressive and radical as they come in a good way. Yo, you know what? Politics is a game of addition, not subtraction. And when you start getting into terms like D that have the word D, like defund something, that's subtraction rhetoric. You know, that's what, like, I've worked in political strategy. I didn't do talk radio all my life. I come from a political strategy background, and I have to work on messaging, and it's all about winning campaigns. And if you want to win, if you want to shape policy, you got to win the election first. Because if you're not winning elections and you don't have all your allies lined up and your ducks in a row, you're not going to pass policy. You'll never get to that point where you totally, I've said, restructure the police or remix the police or just reform the police. Whatever you have to do, you can come up with other terms that then can become, that can find some resonance where you can start actually getting allies and getting other people that you otherwise would never have imagined would be on your side about this and can help you pass the policy where you finally fundamentally, I've even written about it. You probably didn't even, I've written like a few pieces on this, including one major piece in the Philadelphia Citizen where I actually lay out a strategy, come up with strategies like, hey, don't call it policing anymore, call it public safety. Stop, you know, let's eliminate the warrior mindset amongst police. They should be guardians of the community. You know, let's impose, it just had an argument with someone last week about this on air about like, hey, you know what, we need to propose and need to maybe get Philadelphia City Council and the mayor on board for now. Like, oh, you know, you police don't want to straighten up. All right, well, you know, we're going to ensure that you now are mandated to have professional liability insurance. That's a quick way to get them to act right, because then it's just like malpractice insurance for doctors. If doctors don't have malpractice insurance, guess what? They won't be doctors anymore. So like if they want to keep, you know, their badge and their gun and walking around patrolling streets or being a police, they have to have professional liability insurance. So you know, this is the problem here with this conversation, and this is why it's got to stop, and we got to move forward on a both and strategy where, hey, on one hand, we are aggressively calling for and demanding the restructuring of police. But on the flip, we are addressing these quality of life, these pillar quality of life issues, these economic distress issues. And I never blamed it on us as a people. I never said that. And so, you know, I didn't say that. And so, yeah, so, okay, so it is personal because it's like, don't put words in my mouth and don't put words in other people's mouths, because you're losing the kind of support that you need to finally get to the end goal. Because what you want to do, you want to make a point, you want to just say defund the police all day just because it sounds cute. Or do you want to get policy passed? Do you want to put an end to this? People want to have these perpetual, ongoing conversations and arguments, but they don't want to solve the problem. I just want to solve the problem, right? And I'm assuming, Kenrick, you do as well, right? And so the way to solve the problem, because these are government agencies, is you have to win elections so then you are in the seats to change the policy. You can't shape policy if you lose in elections. You can't do it. It's impossible. And so you're not going to have any influence. If your perspective is losing an election, you won't have seats in the city councils. You won't have seats in the mayor's offices. You won't have seats in the state capitals. You won't have seats in Congress to be able to pass that kind of policy, to be able to totally reshape and restructure those police departments or the way policing is done. It's not going to be done. You won't be able to do it. You won't be able to change their budgets or have any control over their budgets or be able to redirect funding. And the other thing too is that, yes, I think, you know, I'm hearing more people in Philly saying, where's the police, than they are saying defund the police right now at this point. And we have to address that. Let's stop putting our heads in the sand about that. We can do a both and. We can walk in, Danielle said it, we can walk, and she's a big proponent of defunding the police. But now even I'm noticing she's starting to be like, you know, we just need to rethink just the phrase. Just because Kenrick, and let me tell other people out here too, just because people disagree with the words does not mean on any level that they disagree with the core mission, with what that, see, we going into that phrase has become so toxic that we forgot all about what we were proposing in the first place. So that you're losing the campaign, that you've already lost. So then, okay, so just go back to the drawing board for a moment. It'll take just a few minutes for everybody to go back to the national drawing board and say, hey, listen, let's come up with something else that's that will actually resonate with everyone. You know, we even get folks that normally wouldn't be on board with this conversation to be on board, so we can win these elections, get the people we need in positions we need, and understand that a campaign message or slogan or whatever you want to call it that might be effective in Brooklyn, New York, or in West Philly where you live, it's not going to play out the same way in, say, Oklahoma or the suburbs of Denver, Colorado. You know, you want to make sure that you create a national movement that's actually going to work, and at the end of the day, you pass the policy and you succeed. Right? That's where we want to get to. I want to get things done. I don't want to just make points. I can make points all day. I'm on talk radio. That's all we do. We make points. But what's the plan? And do you get to optimal success? I'm sorry, I went a little overtime on that. I'm sorry, Andrea. Let me wrap this show. But I appreciate you, Ken, nevertheless, for tuning in, and everyone else out there. We're going to The Source with Andrea Lawful Sanders up next. Philly and beyond, want you to stay smart. Stay sharp out there, and more importantly, stay safe. We'll talk to you tomorrow, God willing, tomorrow, Tuesday, 10 a.m. sharp. Have a great afternoon and a good evening. Take care.